Dun, 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 dun. There we go, our smiling faces. Welcome back. Meeting's back to order. Roll call vote, please.
Miranda.
Here.
Maniscalco. Hurtak. Here. Vieira. Carlson. Here. And Clendenin.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you. Once again, for those of you that were patient with us today and waiting for your business for the morning, I appreciate that patience. Hope you had a good lunch. We are going to start with the 10 a.m.
Motion to open
Yeah,
all
that's where I was going.
meeting?
Motion?
Motion to open all public hearings.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion to open all public hearings. So we have a second from Councilman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. Mr. Shelby.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my council want to consider taking the second reads before you do the 10 o'clock hearings.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the 10 o'clock. I thought you meant, I'm sorry, I thought you meant the actual hearings that were the vacations and the like. Okay. My misunderstanding. Thank you.
See me. So the first one is quasi judicial.
Unmuted.
I'm sorry. We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. That's right, because Mr. Shelby interrupted me, so I wasn't able to get to the vote. All those in favor of opening the hearing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the hearings are open. The first hearings are non-quasi judicial. The next, as the first two items, the next one will require swearing in, but we'll hold off on the swearing in until then. Item order for business is 49, file number VAC 2419.
Ross Samus, Development Coordination, presenting file number VAC 24-19 for second reading and adoption. I'm available if you have any questions.
Council have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Alex Shaler, 400 North Ashley Drive, also available for any questions you might have.
Does council have any questions? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak to item 49?
Move to close.
We have a motion to close from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Councilman Carlson, would you like to read item 49?
Sure. I'd like to move file number VAC 24-19, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning that alleyway right-of-way located north of 7th Avenue, south of Oak Avenue, east of Interstate 275, and west of Taliaferro Avenue within the plat map of Oak Ridge subdivision in the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, as more fully described in Section 2 hereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions as more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violations, providing for definitions, interpretations, and repealing conflicts, providing for severability for the effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Moving on to item 50.
Susan Johnson, Velez Legal Department. Item number 50 is second reading on an ordinance to correct a scrivener's error by substituting a correct legal description for property for that rezoning. I'm available for any questions.
Does council have any questions? Is there an applicant? Oh, that's us. Never mind. We are the applicant. Okay. Motion. Anybody in the public wish to speak to this item? We have a motion to close from Councilman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. Glad to read it. I hereby move an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption ordinance amending ordinance 2004-14 passed and ordained by City Council, City of Tampa on January 8th, 2004, rezoning property in general vicinity of 4905 Price Avenue, City of Tampa, Florida, correct a scrivener's error by substituting a corrected legal description attached to said ordinance Exhibit A, providing for severability and effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from?
Second.
Councilman Miranda, please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to the public hearings that are quasi-judicial proceedings which require being sworn in. If you are here to testify on items 51 through 57, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Item 51.
Thank you, Council and Chairman LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item 51 is REZ 24-114, is for the property located at 206 West Columbus Drive. The request is to rezone the property from CG Commercial General and RM24 Residential Multifamily to PD Plan Development for residential single-family attached use. Site plan changes were required to be made. Those changes have been made. The plan has been certified and provided to the clerk, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Does council have any questions? And do we have an applicant? For item 51? Okay. Hearing none, is anybody in the public here to speak to item 51?
Move to close.
We have a motion to close from Councilman Miranda, a second from
Second.
Councilman Carlson, second from Councilman Carlson. Please record your vote.
Nope, I
Oh,
have to read it.
I'm sorry, we have to read it first. Councilman
File
Miranda.
number REZ 24-114, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 206 West Columbus Drive in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classifications CG Commercial General and RM24 Residential Multifamily to PD Plan Development Residential Single Family Attached, providing an effective date.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Moving on to item 52.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item 52 is REZ 2517. This is for the property located at 7602 North Nebraska Avenue. The request is to rezone the property from SHCI, Seminole Heights Commercial Intensive, to SHPD, Seminole Heights Plan Development, and this is for residential, single-family, detached, and attached uses on site. Site plan modifications were required to be made. Those changes have been made. The plan has been provided to the clerk, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, LaShawn. Anybody have any questions? Is there an applicant? Anybody in the public wish to speak to item 52? We have a motion to close from
Second.
Councilman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. Councilman Miranda, would you read item 52?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, file 52, file number REZ 25-17. Ordinance being presented for second reading adoption. An ordinance rezoning property general vicinity of 7602 North Nebraska Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification SH-CI, Seminole Heights Commercial Intensive, to SHPD, Seminole Heights Plan Development Residential Single Family Detached and Attached, providing an effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Miranda, second from? Second. Councilman Vieira. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Item 53.
Thank you, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item 53 is REZ 2534. It's for the property located at 3305 West Oakellar. The request is to rezone the property from RS50, residential single family, to PD Plan Development for residential single family detached use. And site plan modifications were required to be made. Those changes have been made, and the plan has been certified and provided to the clerk. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Is there an applicant? What's the name? Kevin, are you online? I think we can move past.
You hear me?
Kevin, going once?
Motion to close.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this item? We have a motion to close from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Please record your vote. Oh, we do this again, don't we? Councilman Carlson.
Okay, 53.
53, yes.
I'd like to move file number REZ 25-34, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 3305 West Oakellar Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification RS 50 residential single family to PD Plan Development Residential Single Family Detached, providing effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. 54, please.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item 54 is REZ 2538. This is for the properties located at 102 and 106 South Mabry Highway. This is a request to rezone the property from PD plan development, which allowed for the retail with drive-through, to PD plan development for a clinic use. There were site plan changes that were required to be made between first and second reading, and some of those changes were listed on the staff report. But in addition to those, council, you may recall at the first reading, on June 12th, the applicant was directed to work with the community. The applicant did meet with the community, and they have added to the site plan an 8-foot wall along the southern boundary of the site. And they will have landscaping outside of that wall. So that change was made. In addition to the other changes required on the staff report, the plan has been certified and provided to the clerk. And I am available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Council, have questions? Applicant?
Good afternoon, Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hillward and Henderson, and we do appreciate your support at first reading, but we did take your direction and did meet back with the community on June 25th. There was an on-site meeting with Baycare executives and members of the community, and there was a discussion about how to handle the screening on both the southern and eastern boundary. And if I'd like to approach and provide council with large copies of what we presented, and I'll also ask Kathleen Keene from VHB to come up and walk you through what we're proposing.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Keene from VHB. Wait a moment for everyone to get a copy. Well, thank you for your comments last time. We did take a closer look at the plan to see what we could do to meet council's comments, and we also did meet with the neighborhood on June 25th to present actually a number of options for screening and work with them ultimately to land on the plan that is in front of you and shown on the screen. So we did consider a number of screening options with various locations of both landscaping treatments and a wall. And ultimately what we settled on in conjunction with the neighborhood and what's shown on the plan is a wall along the southeast corner, roughly where I'm outlining right now. So that wall is a total of 8 feet in height. And it is a 6-foot wall, but that wall is located in a location that is 2 feet higher because of the berm. So we do account for the total of 8 feet, but I just want to make sure that's clear. That wall is located directly along the internal circulation roadway. And the reasoning for that was that so the residences could still have a view of the open space area, but then have the wall to buffer from the ambulance drop-off from there. We also are providing a hedge and landscaping along the wall, so that actually runs further to the west along Roland Street. You can kind of see this darker strip, and then further to the north past the wall to provide additional landscaping and screen, not only from the ambulance drop-off area, but also to the dumpster locations as well. And then in addition, we are looking to increase the amount of landscaping along the southern property border that borders Roland Street, so kind of immediately in that view line of the residences. So all of those all of those changes have been incorporated onto the plans that you see today. And we did also prepare some renderings of the view so that council and the neighborhood could roughly see how the view would be disguised really of the ambulance drop-off area and the dumpsters with the proposed changes to the plan itself. I will say one other thing, the wall that we are proposing to put up is similar in nature to the wall that exists on the eastern property line right now. And as a note, we are cleaning up the wall on the eastern property line because it's in a little bit of a disrepair.
Very good. Does council have any questions, comments? Thank you for working with the neighborhood. Looks like it's going to be a better project. So. And it's definitely an improvement over the existing conditions.
Great, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this item?
Move to close.
We have a motion to close for Councilman Miranda, second from Councilman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Record your vote, please. Oh, we got to read it. Never mind. 54. Who's up? Lewis. I know. I'm in the same place. I'm in the same place you are. We're all in after lunch coma.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairman. An ordinance rezoning vicinity of 102 and 106 South Del Mabry Highway in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification PD, plan development to PD, plan development clinic, providing effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman
Before we
Viera,
vote,
second
I would
from,
appreciate if we put the file number on the case, that way it's directed to it.
go ahead. I can read it for you. This is for file.
REZ 2538.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. We have a motion from Councilman Viera, second from Councilman Miranda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. And 55.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn, Dock Development Coordination. Item 55 is REZ 2544. It's for the property located at 2509 North 54th Street. The request is to rezone the property from RM16 residential multifamily to RM18 residential multifamily. This is a Euclidean request, so there's no site plan associated with this request. I'm available if you have any questions.
Does council have any questions? Hearing none. Applicant?
Close.
We have, is there an applicant? Is there anybody in the public wishes to speak to item 55? We have a motion to close from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilwoman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Yes, file number REZ 25-44, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 2509 North 54th Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification RM16 residential multifamily to RM18 residential multifamily, providing an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. Please record your vote. Somebody needs to vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Item 56.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn, Dock Development Coordination. Item 56 is REZ 2547. It's for the property located at 2511 West St. Isabel Street. The request is to rezone the property from PD for a medical office to RS50 residential single family. This is a Euclidean request. There is no site plan associated with this request. It's before you for second reading. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Hearing no questions, is an applicant? No app? Does anybody from the public wish to speak to item 56?
Move to close.
We have a motion to close from Councilman Miranda, a second from Councilman Carlson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And who's up to that? Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. File number 56, file number REZ 2547. Ordinance being presented for second reading adoption. An ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity 2511 West St. Isabel Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification PD plan development to RS50 residential single family, providing an effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Miranda, a second from Councilman Viera. All those, please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. Item 57.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn, Dock Development Coordination. Item 57 is REZ 2503. It's for the property located at 614 East 7th Avenue. The request is to rezone the property from RM24 residential multifamily to CN commercial neighborhood. And this is a Euclidean request. There is no site plan associated. I'm available if you have any questions.
Does council have any questions? No questions? Is an applicant?
Alex Shaler, 400 North Ashley Drive. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions from the applicant? Does anybody in the public wish to speak to item 57?
Move to close.
We have a motion to close from
Second.
Councilman Miranda, a second from
Second.
Councilwoman Hurtak. All in favor of closing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's good.
I move file number REZ 25-03, ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 614 East 7th Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification RM24 residential multifamily to CN commercial neighborhood, providing an effective date.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Viera. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco being absent at vote.
Thank you. So it is 2 o'clock, so it's obviously up time for the 10:30 a.m. Petitions to vacate public hearings on legislative matters. We're going to move on to item 58.
Good afternoon, Council. Emma Gregory, Legal Department. This is a resolution that would approve the city's use of its own services, employees for the Empedrado water main replacement project. This is a statutory process under section 255-20. We sent out the notice for this on May 25th, and we set the public hearing before that, so we've complied with the statutory notice process. During this public hearing, I would ask council to make sure that there's an opportunity for any qualified contractor or vendor to have a reasonable opportunity to present evidence regarding the project and the accuracy of, of the city's estimated cost of the project. That's part of the statutory provision for this. So I believe there is a water department representative online.
Is there someone from Water Online?
In case you have any project-specific questions.
So, does council have any questions about this?
The only question I have, this is not a case where some contractor went default or something, or just plain? Yeah, all right, that's
Yep,
what I wanted
this
to
is
hear. Thank you
just-
very much. You've answered it, thank you.
Yep.
So what do you require from council today? Just pass a resolution?
Yes, but first we need to give any qualified contractor or vendor a reasonable opportunity to present evidence about the city's estimated cost.
And what would that look like from action from council?
Just opening it up to the floor and asking if there is any.
Just today?
Right
So
now.
we don't have to set for a few
Right now,
days.
no, right now. It's been noticed.
So is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak at item 58, including the issues that the representative just discussed? Hearing none. We have a motion to close from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. And do we,
Yes, there was also a resolution submitted
Okay, is this
along
one-
with
okay, very
this,
good.
so then I would ask that the resolution be approved.
okay, so we have a motion to close from Councilman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And would somebody like to move the resolution?
Second.
Motion from Councilman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution passed. 59.
Thank you.
There's a motion. Do we move the resolution under that?
I'd like to ask the clerk to share the element screen, please.
Mr. Shelby, for these hearings, do the applicants, or the people have to be sworn in?
No determination has been made. These are legislative matters.
Okay, very good, thank you. Thank you, you can continue. Oh, CCTV,
There we go. Okay. Ross Amos, Development Coordination,
he's already in retirement.
presenting file number VAC 24-12. The applicant is Teresa McNeil, representative name Amber Demott with Icon Consulting. Property address is 5815 Interbay Boulevard. This is a proposed vacating request to vacate a portion of Schweitzer Avenue, a portion of Green Avenue, and a portion of unnamed and unplatted right-of-way located north of Interbay Boulevard, south of Thornton Avenue, east of First Avenue, and west of Elkins Avenue. This application was filed on April 26, 2024. The right-of-way is currently unimproved. The right-of-way was created by subdivision plat. Existing right-of-way is approximately 3,662 square feet. Here's an aerial view. Proposed vacating request is in yellow here. The applicant's property is in red. And Interbay Boulevard here. This is an atlas sheet, the City of Tampa's atlas sheet, to better show the current request as far as how it relates to how it was platted. This is the request. As you can see, it's part of multiple plats. This is a street view looking northwest from Interbay Boulevard, and approximate location of this right-of-way is here. Staff has no objections to this vacating request. Easement reservations are required by TICO. Natural Resources must comply with Chapter 27 as regards to tree preservation and site design for any improvements placed to adjacent trees in a vacated area. That concludes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Is there an applicant for item 59?
Good afternoon, council members. I am actually the applicant, Teresa McNeil, and the reason why I'm seeking this vacation is actually to build my modest forever home that's taken me 3 years to get here. So I appreciate your time in this consideration, and I'm just trying to make my property comparable to my neighbors and my neighborhood. So thank you very much for the consideration.
Council have any questions for the applicant? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak to item 59? Yes, sir. Start with your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Weldon. I actually live right next door to this property. And as you may or may not know, the owner is a realtor, and they've owned the property for over 3 years. The only goal for them to get this piece of land is to make more money. They told me that once they own the city's piece, that they'll be able to divide the entire property up into 2 separate properties, which means they're going to make a lot more money. I propose that the portion that's owned by the city be open to purchase by anyone. It would obviously, for me, would give me overflow parking area, and I'm right next to where that triangle is. So that would be a better thing to see if you open it up for sale to the community. As I said, when they first bought it, they told me within the year, they're gonna tear it down. And they're gonna start building a new home within the year. Well, that never happened, and as of today, they've done nothing there. I've had to call the police multiple times because vagrants, homeless people, have broken into this abandoned house. They broke in multiple times. I've had to call multiple times. I have a wife and 2 daughters. And I'm very concerned all the time when they're there alone. Also, there was a gentleman who was passed out in the yard for half a day before the police could get there and come out. So it's been a danger. Additionally, my pest control people, Massey, have told me that the influx of rodents that I've been dealing with, the rats, the snakes, the raccoons, which I have pictures of those things. The point is, all that stuff is directly related to that house. It has multiple openings in the house for those kinds of animals to get in there. The neighbors to the east of me, both of them, because they have tall trees. I don't have any tall trees for a reason. I know that's where they go up and get into the house. They both have had to have exterminators come and remove animals out of their attics. So summarizing, I think the city should not allow this. The owner doesn't care about the neighbors that are the citizens of Tampa Bay and are directly impacted by this particular situation. Thank you for your time.
Does council have any further questions? Oh, yeah, we'll have an opportunity for rebuttal once we're done with this.
Could we just ask staff to weigh in on his question about, could staff just explain the rights that other neighbors might have in regard to property like this, just so that's on the record?
Ross Amos Development Coordination. The city doesn't own the right-of-way that's being proposed to be vacated. It just has an interest in the right-of-way, a public interest. As far as reverting the fee ownership once the right-of-way interest is vacated, if so, usually reverts back to abutting property owners in the plat, but the city doesn't get involved with how the reversion of fee-owned property goes. But the city doesn't own anything there.
So I understand with alleys, when we vacate an alley, each owner gets half that alley. So one goes to the front, one goes to the half that goes to the front, half goes to the back.
In most cases.
So in this, can you put up the plat again so we can see this property and how it relates to the adjacent properties?
Hang on one second. So in this situation, in the past, when these plats were platted, there were a lot of questions. I think there was some overlap with the corners of these plats, and it's possibility that the surveyors in the past had used different points of commencement, a starting point, to start their measurements. And I think that's what caused this overlap. As you can see, these bold gray lines here are plat boundaries. So you have one here, and then you have another here. So this area here, as you can see, the city in the past has vacated, these are all vacatings in the past in the same area. And it was basically to clean that area up so people will have the proper lot dimensions to be able to develop.
Now, can you put the other, where you showed the actual, the lot, the existing house, the existing like lot lines?
And when this first came about, this proposed vacating request, the original request was obviously, as you can see, how their lot lines are currently because of the way they were platted and how their deed legal descriptions read. And they are looking to clean that up with this vacation, in my opinion, would give them ability to do that, because obviously they have some odd shaped lots, and if you try to build anything new with the zoning requirements and that sort of thing, kind of brings up issues too, in my opinion.
So wouldn't it make more sense to have that line perpendicular to Interbay, like from that point?
Correct.
And how does that, how would that happen?
In my opinion, if this vacating were approved, I can't get into that, but it would be a civil issue of them working with their neighbors to try and purchase that from them, which I was told in the past that they are in contact with their neighbors, and they had already had plans, survey plans of how those lots will look in the future, but I don't know if that's going to happen now, but that would be the only way.
So who owns that property now?
This in yellow, no one. It is a public,
it's public
right of way.
At this, if I may, Ron Wigington, Legal Department, at this time, we're not sure about who actually owns it. All we know is that the city of Tampa has a right-of-way interest pursuant to an old plat. This was once a right-of-way before it was vacated. I think this is a remnant of one of the previous vacatings. This is a very awkwardly shaped lot, so as far as us making a determination as to who would acquire it or how they're going to divide it up, that really is a private property matter for them to determine between themselves and not the city.
So if this council today were to grant the vacation, what happens with the ownership of that property?
It still is the same as it was yesterday. It's still.
So we're not giving anybody this
We're not
property.
giving anybody any fee interest at all. We're just relinquishing our right-of-way interest, which is an easement.
Decide. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Dawson.
Yeah, just one follow-up thing before you leave. The neighbor also mentioned that, that he believes that they might split this into two lots. Would that, just for informational purpose, would that require them to come back to council, or is it already entitled?
Well, I'm sure that they would have to clean up that title before they can split up any lots, because that still is in limbo. But as far as splitting, I don't know how you can split it up as far as an east and west diagonal basis, and I don't know if it's wide enough to split up into two separate lots, so.
Would it have to come back before council on a separate so that's not part of this?
This is not part of this at all. Yes, sir.
It would be another public hearing where people could weigh in.
I presume so, yes, as far as land use is concerned, and rezoning, and possibly determination of property lot lines.
So before I go into rebuttal, does anybody else have any questions for staff? Actually, unfortunately, your part is done, so we just have to hear from the applicant on rebuttal now.
I was just questioning that the neighbor next to them already put a house up on the property that they don't own.
Okay. So it's your opportunity for rebuttal.
May I respond to a few of these? Thank you.
Start with your name.
So first of all, it's not possible.
State your name.
I'm
first,
sorry,
please.
Teresa McNeil. I'm the applicant for this vacation. So first of all, it's not possible to split the lot because my lot is only 90 feet wide. I've also already done the process, and we're still just working out the deeds and the descriptions, but I've also done the property line reconfiguration with my neighbor on the west. So that's already in the works with the city, has already approved that. So this is sort of the last piece of the puzzle for me to to basically square off my lot and make it buildable. The reason why it's been vacant for this entire time is because I have not been able to build on it without getting this vacation. So when I do get it, or if I do get it, thank you for your consideration, I'll be able to start the process of building and then cleaning up that area so my neighbor won't have any issues with rodents and all the other situations that have come up. I have, though, never personally talked about splitting it. I also went through a divorce, so there's a lot of different things that happen. But anyway, this has been a 3-year process, and I'm just wanting to move forward so I can improve the piece of property, improve the neighbor, and make everybody happy. So thank you again for the consideration.
Since you mentioned all that, do you have a timeline that you've been working on?
Yes, I have the plans in the works, and again, I'm just trying to build a modest home so I can live somewhere. It's been a crazy 3 years for me. So if I could just get the green light with this and then move on to the next phase, then I can get the construction happening and then improve the land.
Is there any way we can put that on the record that, I mean, if it doesn't reverts back, I'm just taking what the petitioner said.
I'm guessing no. I'm
You
guessing
might,
it's
you might
either a
want,
yes
you might
or
want to hear, you might want to hear from the attorney
Yeah.
for that. I think counsel, you have an answer to that question? Mr. Wiggins?
Ron Wigington, Legal Department. So technically speaking, yes, you can put a reverter clause in the ordinance, and that can be done between first and second reading. However, again, in this particular situation, I'm not really sure why that would be needed, if you will, because, again, this is an unused right-of-way. It's a remnant of past vacatings, and it's kind of a combination of, the corner of 3 different plats. So that's why I'm not really sure if it would be suitable to have a reverter and go back to the city. Again, we would continue to have to maintain it if it did that.
So the only decision that we're making here today as council, just make sure I'm clear, is this is not about ownership. This is just about the city relinquishing its rights on the property.
Correct.
But it has nothing to do with ownership of this property.
No, sir, not whatsoever.
Councilman Carlson?
Ron, isn't this kind of like a Scrivener's error? And any idea how this happened? How did this little piece get left out?
Again, with 3 different plats going on and a lot of different reconfiguration of the roads, I imagine back in the day when they didn't have maybe great surveyors, this was just overlooked. We don't really know how it came about as far as this being a hiatus of the right-of-way, the remnants of the right-of-way. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question, but it's not supposed to be there.
Anybody have any other questions? Is there a motion to close? So moved. A motion to close with Councilman, we asked for public comment before the rebuttal.
Does she have any?
That was her rebuttal.
Does she have a chance to rebut what he just said?
Do you have any response to what the attorney just said? Do you have a rebuttal for that?
Yes, from my knowledge, there was,
Sorry, your name again, I'm sorry.
Teresa McNeil. There were 2 roads that were going through that originally, and for whatever reason, the former owner of that land never went through the formal process of vacation. And when I purchased the property, I was told it was just something that never got done and it would be an easy process. But for me to try to build it's been very difficult. So it would help me and the neighborhood just to square it off so that I can improve upon the land and move on with the next phase. I have already submitted part of the plans to the city. I haven't submitted the full thing yet, but it's, like I said, it's all in the works, so.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. So we had a
Thank
motion to
you.
close from Councilman Miranda, I believe, or Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Where did we leave off on reading? Who's next? Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir, Mr.
59.
Chair, yes, thank you. I move file number VAC 2412, an ordinance presented for first reading consideration, ordinance of City of Tampa vacating, closing, discontinuing, abandoning a portion of Switzer Avenue right-of-way that lies within the plat of the renamed Southside Division is recorded in Book 4169, page 1044 of the official records of Hillsborough County, Florida, OR, and a portion of Green Avenue right-of-way that lies within the plat of Brobston, Fending Companies Halfway Edition as recorded in OR Plat Book 2 at page 78, okay? And a portion of that unnamed and unplatted right-of-way that abuts Interbay Boulevard in Tampa, Florida, all of which are located north of Interbay Boulevard, south of Thornton Avenue, east of First Avenue, and west of Alkins Avenue, and more particularly described in Section 2 hereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties of violations, providing for definitions, interpretations, repealing conflicts, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman Viera, a second from
I'll second, but I have an amendment.
Councilwoman Hurtak and
It's
Councilwoman Hurtak.
East First Street, not First Ave.
I'm sorry, yes, so amended, my apologies.
Okay, as amended. Councilman Viera, you won the lottery, having read that one.
I know.
That was fun.
Yeah, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption will be held on August 7th, 2025 at 10 o'clock a.m. in City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
That was definitely the most interesting vacation I think we've heard. Item 60.
Ask the clerk to share my screen again, please. Ross Hammons, Development Coordination, presenting file number VAC 25-07. Representative's name is Stephen Michelini. The property address is 3108 West Dewey Street. This is a proposed vacating request to vacate the alleyway lying north of Abdella Street, south of Dewey Street, east of Matanzas Avenue, and west of McDill Avenue. This application was filed on April 26, 2024. Right-of-way is currently unimproved. The right-of-way was created by subdivision plat. The existing right-of-way is approximately 6,080 square feet. Here's the aerial view of the proposed vacating request. The alley is in yellow. Applicant's property in red. Subdivision plat in which the alley was created, Block 37. Here is an image looking east from North Matanzas Avenue, approximate location of the alley here. Looking west from North McDill Avenue, approximate location. Staff objects to this vacating request. Easement reservations are required by wastewater and Frontier. Special conditions rely on natural resources, must comply with Chapter 27 as regards to tree preservation and site design for any improvements placed adjacent to trees in a vacated area. City staff is available to speak on those objections if you have any questions. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I would like to know your objections.
Jonathan Scott, Mobility. Our objections are, for the reason that they're vacating wasn't really clear. I think they just had on there like new build is their reason. So it wasn't like for a public purpose. And we support like the comp plan, which encourages the use of alleys in the future. I mean, it may not be being used right now, but we look in the long term. One day it could be used for some kind of connection.
Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
How wide is the alley?
Ross Hammons Development Coordination is 10 feet wide.
How wide is the alley? I see that alley all the time when I drive by McDill Avenue, and I saw the sign as I was passing. How wide is the alley from one point to the other?
Platted is 10 feet.
On McDill Avenue?
10 feet.
10 feet.
How much, 10 feet?
10 feet. Mm-hmm.
Is it? Any other questions? Is there an applicant?
Good afternoon, Council. Steve Michelini. As the staff has pointed out, the alley is 10 feet wide, and I want to show you a few pictures. This is the east block running right along here of Dewey and Adela Street. It's already been vacated. This is the east block has already been vacated leading up to this block. And this is the west block that's already been vacated, that's west of this property. This is a photograph of the existing alley with the trees in it. And if you'll note on the staff report from Natural Resources, Natural Resources has reviewed this above referenced vacating request with respect to landscaping, tree removal, and clearing regulations of Chapter 47. They're asking for the protection of the trees that exist in the alley. This alley is not passable, and the 10 feet is severely restricted. None of the homes. This is the existing property in the alley. None of the 24 homes access this for anything, not for garages or anything else. It's blocked by vegetation, and it's been maintained by the adjacent property owners for more than 40 years. The city doesn't maintain it. It's not what you would call usable with any respectable sense. It's not practical. This is block 37, and the property is in here. It's 10 feet wide. The dedication on the plat indicates that it was to be used for utilities principally, and this is the dedication language that I pulled and reviewed that with the right-of-way department. Every lot in this subdivision is 98 feet deep, so all of these lots are non-conforming because they don't meet the depth. This is zoned RS50, so they have 50 feet of width, but they don't have 100 feet of depth. So if the vacating is approved, this will make all of those lots conforming. Here's another picture of the area. The purpose of the comp plan citations that transportation issued, it says when practical to preserve them, but the historic development pattern has already stopped that from happening. It's not usable. It's utilities. There will be a utility easement reserved against for the entire length and width of this alley, and which means nothing can be built in it. So it will remain as green space. Applying the general general principles of the comp plan, they're not intended to be used wholly just for that purpose. They're there to preserve access, and right now they have issues regarding maintenance. They have issues regarding trash and debris. They have issues regarding people wandering around behind their houses, and they'd like to control that. I have a petition here signed by neighbors that are abut the alley supporting this, and they are 3105 Dewey, 3109 Dewey, 3106 Dewey, 3118 Dewey, 3507 Matanzas, as well as 3107 Adelia, 3109 Adelia, and 3115 Adelia. And the two other families that were here earlier were supporting us, the Bladens and the Millions, and I'll support this for the record. They did try to approach all of the other property owners in the area to explain what was happening, but there seemed to be some confusion about whether you could build on an easement, and you cannot be building on an easement. The general issues related to this property also involve, let me grab this other, the access is limited. It hasn't been used by the city. It serves no municipal purpose except for utilities. It's been maintained by the adjacent property owners. There are no garage or other accesses that are provided along the entire block, which is 24 different homes. The easement protects the city's interests regarding utilities. There are utility poles there. There's also a sanitary sewer line that runs here. So there is no intent here to create a developable lot. The purpose is to clean it up and allow the adjacent lots that are vacant to be considered conforming. and would allow the construction of new homes on the vacant lots. And it will also vest and make the existing lots that are single-family, it would also allow them to become conforming instead of non-conforming. So anyway, that's the intent of this. They had another request that I'll mention at the end of the hearing, but it's not related to the vacating. And I'll be happy to turn this in. This is the supporting neighbors that abut the alley. So anyway, historically, it hasn't been used. I have the photographs going back as far back as Google Maps. It shows that it is open and used as green space. It's not being, it has no municipal purpose, again, except for utility access, and that will be preserved via the easement across the length and width of it. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does council have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak to item 60? We have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nobody else wants to talk about it. I'll talk about this one. Anybody else want to talk about it? You know, with all respect to the applicant, these right-of-ways are multi-generational, and you know, even the best trees in that will probably, you know, may live 50 years, but are probably substantially less. And the owners of those adjacent properties that today are not going to be the same owners that are going to be there tomorrow. So we're protecting. I agree with staff's assessment of this. We're protecting these assets for future. And I look at previous decisions by council to vacate so many of our alleys in the city of Tampa, and with great sadness and regret, because you think what kind of assets we would have for the city if they had not done that. You know, we'd be able to use these alleys for multi-generations. So while I get I want this today, as members of the government, we have to think about what's going to happen for the future and protect these assets for the future. It's not about, it's not about, again, those people that are there today. It's, in 50, 60 years, how are we going to develop this, what this neighborhood's going to look like, how are we going to access these areas? And I think alleys are critical to infrastructure, and I think we've set that standard in this council many times, reaffirming those values of how we feel, because the overlay districts and everything else we have, we've institutionalized in our rules about how important it is to protect alleys in the city of Tampa. That's all.
Have we closed the hearing?
Yes.
So I can't respond to that.
You cannot. This is council discussion time. Anybody else?
I can only say that alleys, when I was a young man, were needed because they had skinny trucks, long trucks with one driver, one guy catching the cans, and two guys throwing cans from each side. Those days are gone. They don't longer use alleys to pick up garbage, to pick them up in the front of the house.
We do. Hyde Park, we have skinny trucks.
Well, I'm saying where I grew up at,
yeah.
in Ybor City, and in fact, they were so smart that I was in the housing projects, they dug a hole, made a nice concrete well, and put the garbage can inside the hole, so the garbage people had to pick it up.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? And then put it on the truck, walk about
with that
40
wire
feet, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many back injuries were happening then, or how many were reported, but there had to be some.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying that times have changed a little bit.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, Councilman Maniscalco.
I'll read it. I don't know. So. All right, I have an ordinance being presented for first reading, an ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning the alleyway located north of Abdullah Street, south of Dewey Street, east of Matanzas Avenue, and west of McGill Avenue within the plat of John H. Drew's first extension in the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, as more fully described in Section 2 hereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions, as more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violations, providing for definitions, interpretations, and repealing conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Vieira. Roll call vote, please.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I also believe that alleys are incredibly important, and it's one of those things that once you give it away, you absolutely cannot get it back, regardless. And it upsets me to see so many of these alleys going away, because it is so hot here now that I see a lot of my neighbors using that space to walk their dogs, to walk themselves. And we have the ability, West Tampa right now in the CRA is piloting projects to reuse the alleys. And if we give this alley up, this alley will never be able to become something that right now is looking like a renaissance in the city.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Carlson? Miranda?
Yes.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Hurtak?
No.
Viera? And Clendenin?
No.
Motion carried with Hurtak and Clendenin voting no. Second reading and adoption will be held on August 7th, 2025 at 10 o'clock a.m. in City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you.
Thank you, council. One of the requests that the neighbors that we met with had, and I'll show you a picture of this.
How is this related? Because this,
It's not, it's a different issue. But they asked that the ditches be cleaned out because the ditches and the drainage are not working that run in front. And so I'm just giving you, I promised them that I would mention it, so it's not related, but I'm just fulfilled.
we will give you that one little thing. That's the only thing you get today. Above and beyond.
So anyway,
You called in your one daily favor.
It was a concession that I promised to mention it. So
Okay.
thank you very much for your consideration, and thank you for your support.
My office will look into that and see about it.
Thank you.
We have item 61.
The clerk to share this on the screen again, please. Ross Amos Development Coordination presenting file number VAC 25-10. The representative's name is Victor Melina Rodriguez. The property address is 3203 West Cordelia Street. This is a proposed vacating request to vacate the alleyway lying north of Cordelia Street, south of Ivy Street, east of Lincoln Avenue, and west of Matanzas Avenue. This application was filed March 11th, 2025. Right-of-way is currently unimproved. The right-of-way was created by subdivision plat. The existing right-of-way is approximately 6,080 square feet. There's an aerial view of proposed vacating request in yellow and applicant's property in red. Subdivision plat in which it was created, block 69, and the alley is 10 feet wide. There's a street view looking east from North Lincoln Avenue, approximate location of the alleyway. This is looking west from North Matanzas Avenue, approximate location of the alleyway. It's here. Staff objects to this vacating request. Easement reservations are required by Wastewater, Frontier, Spectrum, and TECO. Special conditions must comply with Chapter 27 as regards to tree preservation and site design for improvements placed adjacent to trees in vacated areas. I want to note also that there was code violations concerning this alley, and other staff or city staff are available if you have any questions as far as objections. And one point I want to make too, I know I asked Ms. Lisa earlier before lunch, there was a misplacement of an email of a budding property owner objection. I think you all received that earlier today. She handed them out to you as an email.
I haven't seen it.
Lisa?
Yeah.
I did not receive that.
Okay.
Did you
I'll check on
receive
that
one?
now. We did. We sent the colleague of mine in my group sent it out to, yeah. And I can make copies of this. I thought she did earlier.
You put it on,
just
put it on.
have yeah,
okay.
well,
You can put it on the wall.
yeah, that'll work too.
It's a pretty long email.
Oh, yeah, just send it around to us
I'm
then.
just gonna send it, yeah. I just wanted to make sure it's on file. It is.
And so then I'm interested in knowing the opposition from you. and the code violations, if you could explain those.
Okay, I'll ask other city staff to speak on their behalf for the departments. Jonathan.
Jonathan Scott, Mobility Department. Once again, it's a matter of the proposed use. You know, it's not like they're very clear, and it's not a public use, and it goes back to the whole idea of the comp plan and maintaining the alleys, and as well as, you know, there's the city right-of-way with, you know, utilities and so forth, which other departments have objected to as well, so that's for all those reasons.
And then what are the code issues? Oh, okay, we have a code person.
Good afternoon, Jean Primus, City of Tampa Code Enforcement. There is an active case regarding this property due to the obstructions that they have placed in the alley, as well as majority of the residents on both West Cordelia and West Ivy Street. They have placed obstructions all throughout the alley. There's maybe one or two properties that don't have anything in the alley. And this was complaint originated or complaint driven. That was the purpose of my going out there to begin with.
Thank you.
Would you like to see any of the pictures of the obstructions
Yes.
behind this particular property?
Yes.
Okay. This is 3203 West Cordelia Street. The fence, the gate right here, that is the alley. That is the alley, and this is the interior of the backyard. Standing at the gate, looking into the backyard, this is the alley, 10 feet. The alley is 10 feet wide. This is the alley. It's been completely paved. They've incorporated the alley into their backyard by placing a fence behind the alley. This is an outdoor kitchen that they've placed in the alley. This is a close-up view of the indoor kitchen. The owner was there at the time of the inspection, and she did grant me access to her property. And this is another picture of the backyard. This is approximately 5 to 6 feet. So this is in the backyard facing the west. So there's an additional 4 to 5 feet that is still alleyway. As you can see, there's been quite a bit of construction and obstruction placed into the alley. The building department also has an active case due to work without permits because none of this work has been permitted.
Councilman Carlson? Are you allowed to show us the pictures of the obstructions in the rest of the alleyway? You said
Not at
that-
this time, sir, because
Okay.
this is the only case.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Councilman Garcia.
Thank you. So the building that's in the alley, regardless of if the alley is vacated, would still have to move because of the easements.
I can't say that it'll have to be moved. That's not my decision. I'm just stating what the violation is with code enforcement
Okay.
and with the building department and with the mobility department.
Okay. Mr. Wigington, do you have an answer on that?
So, in this particular case, this is very unusual because typically speaking, a code violation should not necessarily be considered when you're going through a vacating consideration. The primary focus should be whether this serves a public purpose. However, since this is so unique, there's a lot of encroachments that encompass the entire alleyway. If it was just midway, the center point of the alleyway, then I could say that this might be resolved privately. But since people are basically assuming the entire width of the alleyway, it would knock code enforcement out of the equation because now they're not going to be enforcing an easement as they would be able to if it's a right-of-way alleyway. So, I mean, I would say that is something to consider because if we did vacate this, then it's going to turn into another private property dispute.
Okay, yeah.
Because they've assumed control of the entire alley.
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay, wow.
Okay, any other questions before we?
No, I just want to
Councilman Miranda.
thank you much. About 6 or 7 months ago, I got a call at the house from a neighbor, and I don't know how they got my phone number, but they have it. I think they got it from a trust that I run, and they went and knocked on the door and got the number. And I did go out and see the alley. So I'm just saying now, I don't know if I should vote or not vote. You should. Huh?
have a financial interest in it.
No, I have no
and this
financial
is, this is,
interest
And
at
this is
all.
legislative, it's not quasi-judicial.
None.
So certainly,
But you don't have to provide testimony.
You don't have to provide testimony, but you can ask questions related to what you saw.
right.
But no, you don't have to abstain.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and one more thing, if I may qualify again, Ron Wigington. As far as the issue with building without a permit, if code enforcement is still active on that, this would not affect that. They would still be active.
Understand.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there an applicant?
Hi, my name is Victor Molina, and I'm the applicant because it's my mother-in-law's house, and they don't speak good English. So all those are the neighbors that are, you know, in favor of getting it vacated. And like he mentioned, it would not fix the code violations, and they understand that they're in the wrong. They're not trying to say they're, you know, they want to get away with it. They have to move their fence at 5 feet, you know, to, if it is approved, they only get 5 feet of the alley, not the whole alleyway. And I know you guys were concerned about, you know, the sewer and, you know, the right-of-way through the back. You know, that's a big factor of the neighborhoods. But it's like the front yards, you know, there's a right-of-way in the front, and they still have to maintain it and take care of it. And, you know, plant the sod, pay for it, mow it, do everything. And if, you know, you guys come in, if you guys have to come and do something for utilities or whatnot, you guys can come in and do it. I mean, the city can come and do whatever they need to do. It's not like they're building on the alley. Like, they have to demo, of course, that stuff that's in the alley, like the paved, you know, the marble and the outdoor kitchen, and move the fence. But the sewer and stuff, if it still needs to be accessed, it would not be built on top. It would still be, you know, accessible. You guys could come in and whenever they needed it. And I also have pictures. I know they couldn't show it, but just an aerial picture. I'm not too good with this, but you can see the other neighbors, like that you guys were asking, that were in the alley. So, what is it? Okay. So basically, let me start. So this is the house here. So this is where she showed that the it's paved and they put the fence. But this neighbor's in favor as well. They let them do the fence. You know, they said, I'm not going to use that part. You can go ahead and put your fence. This was 10 years ago. This wasn't something that was done, you know, yesterday. So this part right here would have to be, you know, fenced like everybody. But if you look down the alley, everybody already has the alley, you know, taking care of the alley and mowing it and taking care of that. Sorry about that. I'm not too good with speaking.
You're doing fine.
So everybody, and then you could see here where they've built as well. Another neighbor's built right in the alley, like right up to the alley, as you can see here. And this is the only part of the alley that's, you know, not being used, that's still vacant, which this neighbor mows it, this neighbor mows it, and the, you know, the neighbors take care of it. And right here, they've had to kick homeless people out and call the cops because they've had, you know, people leaving, you know, debris and needles and stuff that they were obviously, no one wants to have that in the neighborhood. So just figured and that fence has been there since 2007, where you see it in that picture. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Council have any questions for the applicant? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak to this item?
Good afternoon. I'm Nilda G. Morales. I reside at 3209 West Cordelia Street, and I am in favor of us keeping our fence up for multiple reasons, safety being one of them.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody have a question?
You said you're in favor of keeping the fence up. Does that mean you're in favor of closing the alley or leaving it open?
I'm in favor, whatever is gonna be good for everybody, I want that too. But I'm not gonna be in a position to move my fence if I have to move my fence. But I would like it to stay the way it is, if that's a possibility.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I ask a
you.
question of staff?
Sure. Councilman Carlson.
Just the staff, I don't know.
You're good. You can sit down now.
I don't know if code enforcement can answer this, or legal or somebody, but he just showed a map that showed, I think, a bunch of the neighbors encroaching on the alley. Would that mean that there were multiple neighbors that didn't get permits that might be violating the code? Do we know any? Yeah, if you're allowed to testify, or maybe somebody else can.
I mean, it's a, Ross Amos Development Coordination, it's a possibility that they do have other abutting owners, but just what we have on file as far as what code enforcement has worked on, as far as complaints.
You talked about unusual cases like the last one. I don't remember one exactly like this either, where everybody has already encroached.
Especially for the entire alley.
Yeah, other than a couple neighbors, most people have encroached on it already, but I don't know how they would have gotten a permit to do that.
And also we're looking at aerials, we're not looking at surveys to see what is in the field compared to property lines, so we need to be careful with that as well, but it does look like it's completely across the entire 10 feet of the right-of-way.
In terms of utility access, he was talking, the applicant was talking about that he understood that they would have to tear out the concrete, right? What are the rules about providing utility access to property? Are they allowed to put concrete on top of it?
Most times easement-wise, yes, there's concrete and asphalt all over easements all over Tampa, in parking lots and that sort of thing. Driveways, yes. So that's not more of the issue. The issue would be footers and that sort of thing, and overhangs, building overhangs, so they can't get utility vehicles, or it may, I can't speak with TICO, but they have certain height restrictions, how close they get to the power lines and that sort of thing too. But the ease of access is always a plus for utilities, as you know, but they have the option to request access from the front of lots too. But, that's an issue in the future. It could pose as an issue for utilities, but there's other ways. I know, as far as wastewater goes, they have certain ways of working on those lines without accessing the alley. They slip line some of those. So I can't answer that, but that's just my opinion.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Ron Wigington, Legal Department. So in our proposed ordinance, should this pass, we do have restrictions on what they can build in the easement area, and that is limited to only grass and low shrubbery. There should be no improvement, structures, walls, or buildings, whether permanent or temporary, that shall be located within the vacated right-of-way. So
Is that consistent with City of Tampa policy?
it very much is. Yes, sir. And that also goes along with the TICO easement, the Frontier easement, the Spectrum easement, and all the other easements that we have reserved. So again, if this was to be passed, those easement rights would have to be enforced through the court system as opposed to code enforcement.
Councilman Carlson?
Yeah, so to the previous question, looking at the aerial photo, it looks like there's all kinds of structures on top of there from the neighbors also. So does that mean that the neighbors would all have to remove those, no matter what, whether we vote yes or no, they still would have to move it?
Well, again, as Ross mentioned, we have a wastewater easement, and so they have means by which they can access their facilities. So I'm not exactly sure whether they're going to enforce the restriction of placing any kind of permanent or temporary structures in the right-of-way, but we do have 2 or 3 other easement holders that may want to enforce those rights, so they would require the removal of all those structures that are impermissible. Now, if they get written permission from TICO, Spectrum, Frontier, et cetera, then that would be a different situation.
Councilman Hurtak?
Can I see the email from who has the email?
Susan does.
Can I? Okay, and then I think we might have more public comment. I just want to look at this again.
Is anybody, so I think we're done with staff. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to item 61?
Good afternoon, Stephanie Pointer. I'm looking at this and there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me. Number one, who filed the code enforcement complaint? Did the code enforcement officer notice this and file it herself? Because if she didn't, and a citizen actually did that, where are they? Because if they cared enough to file a code enforcement complaint, then they care enough to be here, did they get notice? The second thing I went to a code enforcement hearing about a month ago, and I saw pictures that looked very much like the ones that this code enforcement officer presented today, where the whole backyard was paved. And then this gentleman put up the aerial, the whole front yard's paved. I thought we had a rule about 50%, no more than 50% impervious surface. We have a problem with flooding. And I understand the need, desire, want, whatever, but I just feel like there's questions that I have that you probably need to be asking. But like I said, when I went to that code enforcement meeting, somebody rolled out and flopped down some pictures of a backyard, and they were standing in the next door neighbor's yard when they did it, and the next door neighbor's whole backyard was paved. I was like, they're standing on a code enforcement to take a picture of a different code enforcement issue. So my big concern is, where's the person who filed it if she did not find it herself? And I would hope that somebody is looking at the amount of permeable surface on the property. And other than that, I got nothing. Thank you.
That's just FYI, that's kind of not what we're hearing here today, by the way. So.
Actually, this is exactly what this email says, is that the flooding is an issue, and that they need the permeable surface. Yeah, no, who filed the complaint isn't, but we do have a neighbor who's really, who has had flooding. Anytime it rains heavily, we get flooded now. In 40 years, the water would just flow freely through the alley, alleviating that situation. Now it cannot. So I don't know. I think it would be best if Mr. Salmons put this at least up on the wolf for a moment, just to put it into the record.
Okay, so we've heard public comments. Is there a motion to close?
Well, I think, again, I think we should just
They can sit there.
take a look at this.
Well, council's heard of this for the public now. See this?
And then don't we give the applicant
Of an opportunity to address anything.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true. Applicant, would you like to come up and rebut anything that you've heard since your testimony?
Can the homeowner,
Sure.
the homeowner wanted to
Yes.
say something?
Yes.
Me little speak English, but me explain for
Yes.
the neighborhood so happy.
You have to state your name first.
Oh, my name is Julia Morales. This is the owner for
Gracias.
3203 West Cordelia Street. For the neighbor so happy for my house. My house, no, the people no complain for the flooring, anything for the another house. Everybody in my street want to close the alley. For this, want to open in the corner. For the forest corn, for the violation for me, this is go for the permit, for everything, whatever. But I need everybody in the street in Cordelia and Ivy want to close the alley for no one person in the back. This is living here for 18 years, never, everything closed. Everybody say, my neighborhood, everybody here, and say everybody want close the alley. And Ives and Cordelia, Lincoln and Matanza. Having another question. I don't know why they complain only Lincoln and Matanza for the alley. For you go West Tampa, looking every alley, this in the next, in the front, in the back, everybody uses the alley in West Tampa. And the people not having violation. Only my house having big violation right now. I don't know why. For the forest corner having complained for the another neighbor, and me say, what happened? And the neighbor at the inspector say for me, no, me look in the alley. And me say, oh, you coming? Look in my house. Everybody use the alley. And coming inside my house, me say, coming inside, you look at me in the picture, put in violation for me. But me say, the inspector, you coming, looking for everything. Everybody use the alley in West Tampa. For me having too many pictures, For you go McDill, everybody close the alley, maybe 1 or 2 alley not close, and you go Lincoln, same, and you go Glen, same, West Tampa, everybody uses the alley.
Thank you, gracias. Councilman Miranda.
In fact, I was going to ask for this council to have a study on all of West Tampa and every alley to show you that. I was going to bring it up. I know it's not this lady, never spoke to her about speaking like that or anything else, but the problem is at time of sale, nobody knows what happened because nobody explains it to anybody. Half of them don't speak English, so they think they're in Miami or in Fort Lauderdale or in Hialeah, not Fort Lauderdale, but in Hialeah or in Cuba, and they do what they got to do to make their house enhance.
And my house pay.
Just a second, please. So what I'm saying is, we have to do a study of all of West Tampa on all the alleys to show you what I'm talking about.
No, I know.
In fact, my alley where I live at, I bought it closed in 1968. Was it really closed? I really don't know.
How about we do a motion to close and then we can have
Then-
council discussion? Can I entertain a motion to close?
Second.
We have a motion to close from Councilman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Hurtak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're done. Finito?
So,
Finish, that's finito.
this,
Italian, okay.
okay. May I?
Yes, Councilman Hurtak.
Thank you. I understand that people may have bought a house that way, but this is basically saying.
Well, I never said they bought a house that way, but most of them
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing, and they did it.
Correct, but that, again, this goes back to my variance
understand.
review board days. Just because you did it doesn't mean it was legal, and we shouldn't just say, oh, no biggie, because.
I didn't say that either.
No, I understand. You didn't say that. I'm just moving
understand.
forward and saying that, for people to just take over an alley, even if it's been done for multiple years, the bigger concern is the email that's sitting in front of us from a neighbor on that street who's concerned about flooding. And I have to say that is what concerns me more than anything. I am very concerned that we're going to close an alley that helped flooding. Even if it's just one neighbor, that person, I don't believe in closing alleys. B, I'm very concerned about asking permission or asking forgiveness instead of permission. I don't think that's okay in the city of Tampa, even if people don't understand. That's not an excuse. And I'm very concerned about the water. I mean, it says clearly in this email that water used to flow down that alley and now it can't. And that's where we are right now. I'm very concerned.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is, and I share Councilwoman Hurtak's concern on this, is this is an allegation written in an email from someone that I pay some level of deference to, obviously, but is there any way that we can have this professionally looked at by the Stormwater Department to see if this is in fact true? Because I would hate that to be a determining factor that I rely on in my decision. And again, this individual wrote this email. I'm sure they believe that, but is that so? That's my.
Can we stop there for a second? So staff and the objections, because the city has objected to this, did Stormwater weigh in on this?
We have to reopen.
I'm sorry.
Ross-
Okay,
Ross
second.
Amos,
We have a
Planning
motion to
Commission.
reopen from Councilman Maniscalco, second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ross Amos Development Coordination, Stormwater has reviewed, they review ever vacating, yes.
And did they object?
No.
Thank you. Okay.
May I ask while we're open?
Okay, we'll reopen. So yes, Councilman Vieira.
Yes. So my question to be, because again, if Stormwater looks at this email and says, with all due respect to this individual, this has no bearing or effect whatsoever on the flooding, I'd like to hear that. Just because they didn't object, and by the way, if they objected, obviously it would be consistent with this, but I just want to know.
Well, this will come back to a second, so we could
Yeah.
maybe get the minute.
I hate to get their hopes up though, if
Did Ms. Feely have something to say?
Ms. Feely, you recognize?
Good afternoon, council. I have not been sworn in, so.
We don't have to- we don't have
Okay.
to swear
Oh,
in.
it's not
But you do have to state
quasi-judicial.
your name.
Thank you. Abby Feely, Administrator Development and Economic Opportunity. So I hear council's discussion. I just want to provide a little bit of information. We wouldn't do a stormwater analysis or have stormwater in their review is only looking at whether or not there is a public interest in this alley, okay? Your discussion is headed down a different path. they cannot get a permit. They did work without permit. They cannot get a permit in a right-of-way. So in order to actually have to then go and get an after-the-fact permit, because heard they were cited as well, that would come after, and then the whole 50% would come in, and the other stormwater engineering that would be required to even keep part of what I witnessed in those photos would be through the permit process. That can't happen yet, because right now you have an improvement that's in a right-of-way, that they're asking for it to be removed as a right-of-way, then the second part of that would be dealing with the improvements that are there. So we can't even get there. I don't know that we will get there. You know, if council were to approve this, it would take one path. If council is to deny this, it will take another path.
Since you're here,
Yes, sir.
City of Tampa policy on alleys, isn't our land development code, of course, the future land use, isn't it for alley retention? Don't we have basically a Tampa, we're trying to.
denied it. That's why staff.
I know that's
In the
what I'm
West
saying, but-
Tampa overlay, your code speaks to having access from the alleys, and the intent is to maintain the historical pattern of the West Tampa area.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, Mr. Chair? So we
Councilman
saw, I don't know if you saw, but there's an aerial that was shown, that shows all the neighbors have structures in the alley too. Would you might not be able to testify to each one, but would it be true probably that they could not have gotten permits if they're in the right of way? Isn't that what you said a minute ago? If they built a fence in the middle of this in this alley, they would not have been permitted. So the presumption would be that all of that is not permitted.
Correct. So the condition that you see is a condition that is somewhat frequent in the city. Typically, it's fencing only, where people have put fences in, and fences don't require permits, so that does happen. That happens Riverside Heights and Tampa Heights, where the alley is not an improved alley, so it doesn't have paving, so a lot of times people think, oh, I can just put my fence out to the middle or whatever it is. So, but the assumption that the other improvements that you see there are not permitted is a correct assumption, yes. And a lot of times this will start with a code enforcement matter, and then code enforcement will cite. Sometimes if they're able to cite all the improvements or all the property owners down the alley, they will, and then they ask them to remove them. In this case, and I think you had a vacating a couple of years ago, maybe down in South Tampa, same kind of difference. Improvements had been made. The only way to even begin to start a permitting process to make those improvements is to start with the vacating, because we don't let you put this in the right of way unless you came for an encroachment, which is different than a vacating. But this is a full use from the evidence that was shown, the aerials and photos that were shown. So I hope that helps in kind of clarifying the line of questioning you were going down. We wouldn't necessarily do that analysis at this time because it's not under a permit for 50% or stormwater engineering.
Just one small
Okay,
thing, if I may.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you. So my only question that I want answered is this: is the vacating of this, does the closing of this alley in any way have any detrimental effect on stormwater and flooding for the neighbors? That's all. You know, that's it. Yes, ma'am.
And
Councilman Hurtak.
thank you. I think that what they're saying is
They haven't done the study.
they haven't done the study, but the issue, I mean, and this is providing testimony to agree, but in my neighborhood, all of our water does go to the alley.
Yeah.
So I know alleys can be used for stormwater. I think it's more the pervious surface issue, which Ms. Feely correctly said would be dealt with after the code enforcement violations and so on and so forth.
I heard a motion to close, but I would like to give the applicant one last opportunity because we've had a lot more testimony. So applicant, would you like to rebut what you've heard?
Yes. My name is Victor Molina, and I'm the applicant. And I just wanted to point out a fact that I was looking, I just read the email, and it says they were complaining about the flooding, but it says it right here. The neighbor at 3219 West Cordelia who added a struck from his gable to our property line, causing his water to go directly into our yard, which after that would go into code enforcement because it's a violation for building in the alleyway, in the right of way, that has to be, removed or demoed. Once that is removed and demoed, then, that fixes that issue because no one else in the neighborhood has complained about the flooding. No one else. That's the only person. And then, if you got a gutter, a gable going into that neighbor's yard, you're gonna get a lot of water from it because the water's flowing into her yard. But no one else's house has been flooded, and we just went through Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene, and no one complained about the flooding. So, I understand that, they're gonna have flooding if you got water flowing from the neighbor's house into your yard. But once that's demoed and everything goes into code, everything's back up into code, that should fix their problem.
Thank you.
And sir, if I could just have the letter, is it still there?
The letter, yes.
Could I, no, if I could just have,
We-
I'll
the-
give it
the
back to the
has a
clerk.
copy. It's that email that was passed around earlier. We have a motion to close from Councilman Maniscalco. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Councilman Vier. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Is there any further discussion? Councilman Hurtak.
It just doesn't change it for me. I just, the egregiousness of, it still goes back to the fact that we need to be saving our alleys, and then folks are building on it with the stormwater problems that we're having. It's only a matter of time before they hit that area. I still think, regardless, we have a bunch of new code enforcement issues that we need to tackle. And I'm very curious to know that now that you have that aerial, hopefully each of those neighbors will be required to fix their issues. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'll say it's kind of a reiteration of what we said on the last issue, which I was on the losing side of. Either we have a policy of evaluating the alleys or we don't. I can't imagine if anybody was to come here from Hyde Park and wish to vacate an alley in Hyde Park, what you would hear. And just because, again, West Tampa overlay, we have a policy. If we don't like the policy, let's throw out the policy. Say we're not gonna value the alleys. But we do have a policy that says the city of Tampa wants to retain these. And these structures that in these alleys, they're temporary. They're in the eyes of people, these things, even if they live a ridiculous long period of time of 80 years or something, but once you give away, I think Hertek said that, once the city gives away its rights, it's gone forever. You can never get it back. But these structures they're going to be gone, and new houses will be built, and new trees will grow, but the right of way, we'll never get it back. So on these things, so Councilman Carlson, I heard.
Yeah, I didn't say this in the last case, but I wanted to say. I feel the same way you all do about alleys. For the first 2 or 3 years I was here, I voted, I think, against every alley vacation. But there are some cases where I started looking on a case-by-case basis. There's some cases where they've been blocked on both ends already. Other things have happened. I voted for them. And so there are cases where I will vote in favor of it. But what I'm not in favor of is folks asking for forgiveness after they've done things that are illegal, and so I can't, even though it's a huge expense to change things. We have a permitting process, and folks need to follow the rules on that. It's not, we should not vacate because somebody broke the law by building something in a right-of-way.
Councilman Maniscalco, I saw your microphone. Okay, no, I agree with you. I've same thing. When you see past vacations that render the alley useless or not viable, or there's no real public interest in it, I've done the same thing. I voted for those, but generally I'm opposed to it. Okay, so what is the desire of council? I know Councilman Hertek, you were next, but I don't think you're going to want to read this. Does anybody want to read this?
In fact, I'm thinking, I've never got notified about a notice for this. Property that's owned by the trust that I manage, it's on that street on the other side, and I've never been notified about anything.
Okay.
It has no reflection on that.
Would somebody like to read a denial? It's a pleasure, council.
If there's a motion?
Yeah, how do we do that?
A motion to deny, criteria.
Okay. Let's see. I'm motion to deny VAC 2510 abandoning the alleyway located north of Cordelia, south of Ivy, east of Lincoln, and west of Matanza Avenue within the plat of John H. Drew's first extension in the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, due to the failure of the petitioner to give a solid reasoning other than they want to.
If I can.
It does not,
I can make it a lot easier.
an abutting owner will be completely cut off or substantially diminished as a result of the vacating, and we do have an opposition for that.
Mr. Shelby, you wanted to?
Yes, I'm just going to direct your attention, Councilwoman, to the first line, and based on the evidence presented, do you have a finding that it's in the interest of the general welfare of
No,
this to vacate the subject street or alley?
There is no
Okay.
finding.
So that is a finding of council in your
Yeah,
motion?
that there is, yes, there is no finding.
Okay, thank you.
That it would be in the public benefit.
And based on staff reports as well. Okay, very good. We have a motion.
Yes, based on staff reports, thank you.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote, please.
Before
Oh,
the
I'm sorry,
vote.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I'm going to vote
Miranda.
against the motion, even if I vote by myself, and I'll tell you why. We received a letter that states what the motion is based on. We had also an individual who lives there who said why it's getting flooded is not by this neighbor's side, it's by the house next to him. So where am I going to sit at? Who's right, this gentleman or the letter? I don't know. Unless somebody in the city is liable to look at it and tell us what it is. And the only way you can do that is when it rains. So he says it's not, the letter says it is.
Okay.
That's all.
Roll call vote, please.
Miranda,
No.
Maniscalco. Yes. Hurtak,
Yes.
Vieira,
Gosh, it's hard. I'll vote yes. 51 to 49, yes.
Carlson, and Clendenin.
Yes.
How did I know I was going to vote alone?
Motion carried.
'Cause you're
Motion
used to it.
carried, Miranda voting no.
Okay, very good. We are going to move on to 62. I'm going to pass the gavel because I have to step out one moment. Councilwoman Hurtak.
Okay, so we have, Mr. Vieira, this is your ordinance. I feel you would want to do the honors. The renaming of the multi-sports field at Forest Hills in honor of Roland Paz Sr.
And if I can,
Yes. You gotta turn your mic on.
yes, thank you. Just so you know that if you, normally now, until your rules are officially amended, but by motion of council, you do have the opportunity for presentation by staff.
Yes,
And
yes,
staff is present.
presentation and public comment. Hi, welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, Michelle Van Loan, Real Estate Department. We have the first reading of the renaming of the multi-purpose sports field at Forest Hills Park. I made the original presentation on May 22nd on the biography of Mr. Roland Paz Sr. We posted it per the ordinance on May 23rd through June 13th, and we did not receive any public comment beyond what you have received in this room, and I'm available for any questions.
If I may, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And thank you, Ms. Van Loan, for your hard work on this. We've gone back and forth because a lot of the information that was available on this gentleman, you had to get from people, and it just wasn't in, available as it should be. But this is really good. We went through the Paz family and their history in North Tampa and Forest Hills. And, we all know Officer Roy Paz, this gentleman's son, and what a good guy he is. I mean, he is like the best. He is the best. He's a kind person. He's a decent person. He's always courteous. I remember back in summer of 2020, we're at the convention center. We had a lot of protests there. It was after George Floyd, and some of them were respectful, courteous, etc. And there were some that were being very, very aggressive with the police there. And I would see Officer Paz just be a gentleman. I mean, just be kind and decent and everything like that. And when you especially see his story, growing up and his father leaving early, dying when he was a very young person, it just speaks more of the kind of person that Officer Paz is and the kind of person his father was. So this is a good thing for a wonderful family. And I will say this, for Forest Hills, a community that has, so many of them have gone through hell in the last year, this is a good thing, because a lot of people there know and love the Paz family and everything. So I think that's wonderful. So I'll read it just whenever. I know others.
Yes, Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. So, when I went to visit my grandparents at the cemetery, I don't know, about a month ago, I don't know why I never noticed this, but the headstone next to my grandparents, which I'll be buried there, says Paz. And I looked at it, and it's Roland Paz. It's him.
Wow.
He passed away, 77, 78? I didn't realize this. So here we are talking about this, and we all know the son, and yeah, he's like 10 feet away. And I said, well, that's interesting. So, yeah, that was it. I just want to mention it. I took a picture if you want to see. So.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, anyone?
Sure, thank you, How do you do this? There you go. I move an ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, approving the naming of the multi-sports field at Forest Hills Park in Tampa, Florida, to honor the late Roland Paz Sr., providing an effective date.
Just add the file number.
Sorry, I keep on forgetting that. File number HN 25-15718.
Okay, any discussion? We have a motion by Councilman Vieira, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Motion carried with Clendenin being absent and vote. Second reading and adoption will be held on August 7th, 2025 at 10 o'clock a.m. in City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you so much. You have such a fun job. You get to come here and tell us all the exciting things about people. We name them, so that must be a really fun part. And every time you come in here, we know we're going to be talking about something fun.
Every so often, I wish it could be about someone living, but yes, but yeah. It does allow me to be an incredible part of the history of Tampa.
Absolutely, and that was what I mean. It's really wonderful that we were able to do that, so thank you so much. Okay, Ms. Feely.
64.
No, we didn't.
Oh, sorry.
It's a small amount, but.
Oh, that's right.
Peanuts.
Okay.
Oh, pocket change.
I don't
Anyone?
believe there was any desire for staff on this. I didn't hear that this morning.
No, but.
So then it's just a matter of moving the resolution.
Okay, I have a motion to move item 64 from Councilman Maniscalco. Second from, I saw Councilman Carlson first. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, 64 is done. Thank you. Now to 68. Sorry, we're having you do up and down and up and down.
Are these the last items? That's
Mhm.
it?
Remember, we did a very short staff report because of our long morning.
Good afternoon, Council. Abby Feely, Administrator of Development and Economic Opportunity. Item number 68 was a motion made by Councilman Carlson related to the July cycle and the ability to bring back the Channel District for inclusion into the Central Business District. And we've done some preliminary work on thinking through this. I think one of the main impetus for this was in order to adjust the height to be the HCAA FAA height, and then also to look at putting it through the DDR process, which is the Downtown Development Review process. In doing that, I did work with Eric Cotton, our zoning administrator, and we would like to propose a two-part approach to this. This is going into the July cycle, which, as you know, we did away with private amendments, so public amendments. The July cycle is now July 15th of 2025. So the first part would be to put into the July cycle, changing that dimensional regulation.
Just a second, they don't, the wolf isn't up quite.
Okay.
There we go. If we could
Thanks.
also get it on our screens.
And then in addition to that, right now, there is a private amendment coming through the comp plan to increase FAR in the Channel District. It comes back before you on the 31st of July. The request, right now, Channel District goes to 3.5 FAR. You can go to 7 if you bonus, and right now there's an amendment to go to 10.5, and then there would be no more bonus. So in processing this text amendment, we need to see what's gonna happen next, the 31st on that. and then we could incorporate that as well. And then just getting confirmation from council that there would be no more bonus in the CBD, in the Channel District area. So that would be the first step to that. The area described in the motion was Meridian to Channel side, but we do have CD1 property that is located along the channel. So I want to make sure that it goes all the way to that area.
I strongly object to that. I knew somebody was going to try to push this.
Yeah, Councilman Carlson.
If not, I'm gonna leave this as CD1 and it won't go in with the rest of the zoning code. We can
Yeah, no,
adjust
that area is for the port, and it shouldn't be designated for being changed. I'm sorry to react to you that way. I don't know whose idea this was. I know where the idea is coming from, but the community is gonna fight hard to make sure that the port is not redeveloped. And so the compromise that I've been pushing for the maritime community is let's provide maximum density up to Channelside Drive. And the people that want to develop that port land are bound and determined, no matter what, to develop it. And it's not going to be developed. So what we should do is provide the area we can.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Just because some lobbyists have clients that want to develop that doesn't mean that we need to develop port land that it's the largest economic engine for our area. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm talking to the people that are pushing this. Because they're getting paid to push somebody's agenda doesn't mean that we need to destroy the economy of our area by getting rid of our port.
I think we were looking at it from just a zoning, just lifting the
It
CD1.
shouldn't be. The last mayor forced the port to add 2 70-story towers in their master plan. And so this mayor says, well, we need to just follow the plan. But they did it under duress because he threatened them. And it turned out that the 70-story towers weren't allowed anyway by FAA limit. And it was a stupid idea. It's stupid to try to redo the port. If this is what's going to be pushed, I'll just withdraw the whole thing. What we're trying to do is provide parity because SPP is building to maximum height across Meridian. And then across the street, they can only build 4 or 5 stories. And again, I'm not arguing with you. I'm arguing with the stupid people that are pushing this idea to develop to the east of Channelside.
So let's go back a second, because I think we can still do so. So right now, and I don't want to write on the fly, but right now in Channel District, there are 2 zoning districts, CD1 and CD2. In the table for the height, it goes to 175 for both, and then it has a subscript that says you can go above that with city council approval. So I know the first desire was to allow that to be HCAA, FAA. So that, we can put that into this amendment, and that's not a problem, and that gets the first part of that. The FAR is gonna come with whatever comes from the private amendment in 2 weeks. If you go to 10.5, we can adjust the FAR to 10.5. That's all. The second part to this was moving things to go through an administrative process. If just changing the height and the FAR is enough for right now to address the intent to allow development at a similar character to the CBD because the height is unlimited, I think that will address that. And then
I'm fine as long as we cut it off on Channelside Drive. Are you still saying that you want to go east of Channelside Drive? That was not the motion. The motion was to go to Channelside Drive.
okay, then I need to create a different district on the other side of Channelside Drive.
Which I'm going to fight for. I will bring out all kinds of people to fight that because that is maritime land. We're out of land. We presented the case that the maritime industry needs to have more space, not less. And again, because a couple developers and their lobbyists want to develop it, does not mean that we should. So if you can't push this forward without going past Channelside Drive, I'll just make a motion to withdraw my motion.
So on the CD1, on the east side, of Channelside, do you want that to just stay at 175?
I didn't ask for anything east of Channelside Drive. I only asked for it between Meridian and Channelside Drive. That was the motion that we approved.
Councilman Miranda.
Yeah. I want to make sure that what you said, that's what bringing the height from there equal to downtown.
Yeah, I made a motion to go from Channelside.
I think I voted for it.
Channelside Drive to Meridian, and somehow I know how, but it's come up as a proposal to go past Channelside Drive, which was not the motion.
No, the motion was made, you made it correctly, number ready, whatever, I remember that part. So I'm with you 100% of this.
The thing is, if we change the zoning district, that zoning district exists on that other side. So it's not that we're trying to push it there, it's already there.
What would happen if we delayed this by 2 weeks? Would we still be able to meet the July cycle? Okay,
Absolutely, we're just starting.
I move that we continue this for 2 weeks, or to the next scheduled meeting, so I'll have a chance to, I'm sorry, I just got back late last night, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this. I didn't know that this was gonna be proposed today, and so I'd like to make a motion to continue this so I can have more discussions with Ms. Feely. And again, I'm not upset with Ms. Feely, I'm upset with the people who keep persisting on pushing getting rid of our port, which is vitally important for our community.
That I'm not sure.
Okay, I just have some questions. If you could put your first slide up, because I just, and I know there's a motion on the floor, but I just have a question that I would like answered. So the direction on removing bonus density. So basically you're saying that if we went to this HCAA limit and we update the FAR in 2 weeks, that we wouldn't need the bonus density anymore. Because the 10 whatever, if that's approved, that would be like mega density, and we would then remove, your recommendation would be to remove the bonus density if we were to do that. So we still need to wait regardless.
I believe that's what's in the private amendment.
Okay.
The private amendment is to go to 10.5 for the district, CD1 and CD2 for that land use, which would translate into the zoning, and then there would be no longer be bonus in that portion of the city.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that before we
Yes.
go ahead and forward with the motion to, and do you want to move this?
I'd
Do you
like
have
to
a date?
continue it for 2 weeks, whenever the next regular meeting is, just so I can have a chance to talk to Ms. Feely.
Okay, because it may be beneficial to wait until after that, because I believe the night meeting is where we will have that
So when-
private text
I'm sorry,
amendment.
let me look at my
So then
calendar.
that would be the first week in, first August meeting?
Well,
When is that?
if we could just talk about the July cycle more
Oh,
in general.
okay.
So the
Sure.
July cycle, normally what we do is on a workshop day, we'll bring to you all the things we're considering putting into the July cycle. And I think there are a couple other things, 3 or 4 that are statutorily required because of changes, so they'll have to go in the July cycle.
Okay.
And then we had talked about putting the new bonus into the July cycle, but we're not sure we're gonna get there yet with the direction that the future land use element and the comp plan's taking, so we wanna make sure those things are synthesizing. So, you don't have a workshop in August, and depending on how our discussion went today, I was gonna say, we would bring those concepts back to you on the September workshop, if you would include it on there. So, Councilman Carlson, you and I could work together and get that, done and go through kind of, here's the zonings that are in there, this is how we would impact it, and try to meet the intent of where you'd like to go with this
So I'll move to
motion.
continue this to the September workshop.
So I don't know that we need to continue it, because this
No,
wasn't a
it's gonna
motion.
go in there, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be part of the
This was
July
simply an
cycle.
update. There was no, this was just to be an update.
I'd like it to be a separate, I mean, I can make a separate motion, I'd just like it to be a separate line item.
Okay, so
Can I
then-
just continue it, is that?
Yeah, motion to continue until the September 25th
Second.
workshop was the motion on the floor, and the second from Mr. Miranda. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank
Any
you.
opposed?
May I inquire?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I inquire, is the July cycle going to be also appearing on the 25th of September? Because I don't see it yet. Or is
It's
it?
not there yet. I'm asking it as part of today, seeing that we now have a couple things that are rolling in that would like to be included into the July cycle that are not statutorily driven for us. We normally, and that's what I had, we do normally have a workshop where we bring you the concepts, you give us your feedback, and then we go out to the public, we take care of those. So it's gonna follow our normal cycle, because we do these twice a year, January and July. It's gonna follow that, so that'll give us some time to work on this and get it to a place that it will then travel forward.
Well, it's not on the calendar, so my suggestion would be, is it your desire then to have that added to the calendar so it's locked in?
That's what I was saying, if you want to do that. Unfortunately, that workshop is pretty big, but actually, no, that should, I will, because that's the biannual capital improvement project report and presentation. But I will, how many workshops are we allowed to have?
Whatever you can get done by the time you want to get done, which is usually 1 o'clock, because you do have a night, you do have a 5 o'clock night meeting.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, if this is something that's significant, otherwise you'd be putting off these amendments to another workshop, because
So can you bring me up to speed of what does this need to be at a workshop?
Yes, this is.
That's the process we normally bring them.
So, but
Could I make a motion to move, I have an item that's the third one down on the
Yeah.
seawalls. Could I make a motion to move that? If it's not gonna screw up one of the cycles?
Yeah, I mean,
Move it
that-
to the following workshop?
It doesn't need to be a workshop, I don't think. I think that could be a staff report. The seawalls?
Well, can you read to me the motion,
Creating an
Councilman?
ordinance to prohibit the commercial use of seawalls? Remember the
In
Davis Island?
residential areas on Davis
Oh,
Island?
that Andrea
Yeah.
was working on that, right?
Yeah, but that's, that's just creating an ordinance, so that we wouldn't necessarily have to workshop that. We could staff report that,
Yeah,
couldn't
I
we?
agree, I'd make that a.
I
So
could
move-
circle back, I mean, we could circle back and let you know that on the 31st when you come,
So
when
let's
we
just
have our
add
next
it
meeting.
now,
Okay, so
and then we'll take a vote
I
of that
make a
later.
motion to add the July cycle amendments for
The July text
the
amendments
text
for the land
amendments
development
for
code.
the land development code to the September 25th workshop session.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Okay.
Last item, okay. I just wanted, I hope y'all had a good vacation, and we've been really working hard on the land development code. You know, we're in the drafting process, and that is probably the hardest process of the whole undertaking. We are looking forward to re-engaging with the public at the end of September, and that will be forthcoming. I'll know
Just for
definitely.
clarification for the back, you can change
Oh,
the screen.
item
We are
69.
We're at item 69, FYI. Thank you.
That first installment of the update is gonna have, the modernized zoning districts, our definitions and our uses, and, we're working with Clarion on that. Parallel to that, as part of the land development code modernization, we've also been looking at, some of what you talked about this morning, having different types of, corridors and nodes that will support our redevelopment in a more meaningful way. And we're not committed to putting them into the code, but we're studying them. So we worked with the MPO, with HART, with FDOT, with our own mobility team, with planning and with zoning, and put a group together. And with the consultant, we came up with 3 areas that we're gonna look at to see about developing design standards that would support those typologies. But you have to start with studying one to then know where they would be applied to. So when we look at like Bush Boulevard and these other, a lot of times redevelopment is being driven by the market rather than by our design standards. And in bringing the code forward from the late 1980s till now, we want to update that. So I wanted to share with you what those preliminary 3 that they're going to be studying are. The first is at Florida Avenue and Bird, and you can see they not only look at a focus area, they look at a context area. And Dover Cole is a sub-consultant on this, and they're working on this. This will align with what we're involved with HART right now, and also with the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood Action Plan. So I think it will be a good bridge to bring all those things together into the land development code. So that is one. Cypress Street at McDill. Again, you'll see there's a focus area and then a context area. And this is also looking to complement what's been promoted in the future land use update, which I know many of you were at the meeting last night. And then the last is 15th and Lake. So they're all different, and they're different FDOT typologies, and they will really serve a good foundation for us to look further at if we do this and what we come up with and what are the right standards, are those applicable in other areas of the city? And I think they are. Those conditions are replicated in a number of places. Lastly, I wanted to touch on in my update real quick, just many of you are aware that Senate Bill 180 was signed, which does have a lot of information at the local government level. And one of the conditions in there says that you cannot impose more strenuous regulations in areas that were impacted by the hurricanes for a 2-year period. I know some of you have reached out and asked, what does that mean for the city? We're working with Andrea and Kate and getting that together, but we also want to be mindful in this effort, in the Land Development Code update effort, what does that mean for us? We've made a huge investment in this. We need it tremendously, and I just want to let you all know that we have that awareness, that we've got the comp plan update, we've got the code update, and we've got Senate Bill 180, and we're ensuring that all of those things are going to work together, and we hope that they will not derail our plans, even if we maybe have to segment certain things that are good to go and are just modernization could go in one section, things that may have new design standards could go in something else. So that's a little bit of a wrinkle in where we started from this, but we are still fully committed to getting this done and having a new and modernized code. So I just wanted to share those things with you today, and if you have any questions, I'm available.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. I noticed that you brought up Bird Street and Florida Avenue, and when we talk about Sulphur Springs, that area in particular, if you even ask my mother, they spent a lot of time in the 60s and 70s in that area, and they told me what businesses used to be there. Was it Northgate or Floraland? Both of them. It was, because in South Tampa you had Britton Plaza, and that was the beginning of, the changing of people leaving downtown and going into these wide open areas that had, ample parking and new shopping centers and whatnot. But I think within the, since like the 1980s, that's changed tremendously. And then with the loss of a major anchor store like Kmart, which Kmart has now ceased to exist, I think, in its entirety, you have big areas of land. You have what used to be Tower Drive-In, and then you have, the famous water tower, which we've made improvements to the lights and everything. But I know as candidates, some of us here, we were at least one candidate forum right there on Bush Boulevard, and it was about Sulphur Springs and talking about, when are we going to get investment here? When are we going to get, calling it a food desert, lack of grocery store. And it's interesting, there's a Walmart neighborhood grocery right there at Florida and Bush. So there's something, but Sulphur Springs is an area that has been ignored for a long time. It's been, at least since my childhood, and with the loss of that Kmart, and the loss of the grocery stores like at Waters in Florida, and became a flea market, and I think it was like a Bravo, if the Bravo is still open. People feel neglected. There was a gentleman named Joseph Robinson, and his wife was here recently, and he was the neighborhood association president. And he would always tell me, remember, Sulphur Springs is the poorest neighborhood in the city. And I met him through Than 15 years ago, and many of those people have passed away. But the point I'm making, long story short, is thank you for looking at this, because Sulphur Springs, I hear about it every day, because it's I say East Tampa is the land that time forgot, but Sulphur Springs is right there with it. And thank you for looking at this, and I look forward to further discussion and how we can improve that area. Thank you.
Councilman Hurtak, then Councilman Vera.
Thank you. So these 3 areas of study, when do we expect to get some feedback on that?
I don't have that schedule in front of me right now. It's running parallel track to so they're gonna start on that now. The next step would be what types of design standards within this would be appropriate for incorporation into the Land Development Code. and then they'll go to the next step. So I can bring you more information on that next month.
Okay.
When I met with Clarion on Tuesday, this was the second iteration that had come out from the large group, and this is what had been agreed to. And I'm like, I really want to share it with council on Thursday. So it's really fresh off the press, but I can get you that information.
Oh, yeah, no, I just, obviously, we're all a little excited about it, and that, it really helps. I think what it will also do is help the public understand more what the land development code will actually do. And so I really love the idea of just these corridor studies that can show with visuals what we're really looking to do in certain locations. So I really do appreciate it. I think those are 3 really well-chosen spaces throughout the city for various different reasons. And so I think that'll be very exciting. Thank you so much. I appreciate the update. And I know we'll get a copy of the report when the first tranche comes. We'll be ready to go. So thank you.
Councilman Carlson, did you want to speak? I said the light was not there. Councilman
Oh, no.
Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is great and appreciated, excuse me. You know, I look at Sulphur Springs, and Councilman Maniscalco always says about East Tampa, the land that time forgot. I think Sulphur Springs is the land that time doesn't give a damn about. I'm just being honest. You know what I mean? It's never on the agenda. The biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges with Sulphur Springs is there's no big civic movement there that pushes, that makes its voice heard to city council and so forth. And unless if you go out there and you put it on the agenda, right, it's not going to be pushed. We have that a lot in East Tampa, and that's wonderful. There's a great civic tradition in East Tampa. In Sulphur Springs, we need things like this where we unilaterally say, hey, let's take a look at issues of development in Sulphur Springs. What Sulphur Springs needs in the end is, in my opinion, is money. A whole lot of money. We need federal money. We need state money. We need local money. Sulphur Springs needs a new deal. That's it. We got to put people to work, invest in the infrastructure, take those kids out on the streets and give them jobs to help repair their communities. Talk about community centers. Fix up the housing there. Make it a place where people go to and engage in enterprise and so forth. And that takes a lot of government money. And the will for that is just not here. Take a look at the pool. How long has that pool been broken for? I know there's a lot of structural issues, but one of the big amenities that Sulphur Springs had from the city of Tampa, the pool, gone. When's it going to come back? We don't know. So, you know, the big agenda for Sulphur Springs really has been to get them back to their position to where they were before they lost the pool. That's not good. So, you know, this again is obviously a step in the right direction. And when I'm talking about Ms. Feely, has nothing to do with what you do and the wonderful efforts that you put forth on this, but it's about the money and about investing dollars in Sulphur Springs immediately, long term, again, from all government partners. This is a step in the right direction, but again, it's just, there's a lot of things, you know, that we really need to do to put Sulphur Springs on the map from policy. I talked about things like a CRA there. There wasn't support for that. And who knows what the heck's going to happen in the future with CRAs, right? But something to get a discussion on it, something to get a discussion. I remember a story, I love U.S. history. I think it was George Reedy, his name was. He was the press secretary to President Lyndon Johnson, and he goes, listen, on this war on poverty, what are you doing with this? Poor folks don't vote. And President Johnson said, listen, by the time I'm done with this, I don't know if I'm going to get a single dollar passed by this, but so long as we get poverty on the minds of people, and we got to get an agenda that puts Sulphur Springs first and foremost on the minds of people. And that's it. Thank you.
You know, I look at Sulphur Springs a little differently. And I look at actually all of our economically, you know, difficult areas a little differently than a lot of folks I share count the days with. Because I'm afraid a lot of the times that some of the best intentions end up having unintended bad consequences of gentrification and other issues. When I look at Sulphur Springs, there's a disproportionate number of the homes there that are not owner occupied. They're rental properties and investor properties. And I don't even know what that number is, but I believe it's probably substantially greater than any other area of the city. So you don't have a lot of property owners there, people that own a house or invested in the community. You have a lot of renters there. So that's why I think why you don't have that civic activism that you see in other areas of the city. So if I was gonna at least start to sprinkle some magic pixie dust on that area, it would be bolstering the home ownership and providing, opportunities as far as a city of the scope and scale of our city, where we have an opportunity to be able to do that, to be, to expand those programs into areas of Sulphur Springs. So that people have ownership, they have buy-in, and they're invested in the community. And it's not people who are just, buying dozens of houses as an investment and keeping them minimally maintained. And so I think that, to me, for what we can afford to do as a city, I think that we should really look at, continue to double down on those types of programs, especially for an area like Sulphur Springs and so many other areas, Suitcase City up in your neck of the woods, and some of the places that maybe have some historical issues, were historically depressed areas. So that's just an observation. I've said this to a lot of neighbors that come to us from East Tampa. I said, be careful what you ask for, because if we go in there and heavily invest, and you start the notion, I've got a good plan for you, what you end up finding is a neighborhood that you can no longer afford to live in. So we just have to be really careful of our city spending and what we look at these neighborhoods. Are these still going to be working class neighborhoods or senior citizens, or are they going to be gentrified and turned into places that people can't afford to live? I saw Mike's down here, Councilman Maniscalco.
Did you want to go first? You didn't speak yet.
Okay.
Councilman Carson.
Yeah, I agree with the point that we need to help build capacity for the Sulphur Springs area to speak out. And just like other communities, there are a lot of different voices. East Tampa, there's a lot of different leaders, and there's no East Tampa plan. People all have different ideas on what they should do. You all may have seen with my community hat on, I had Charlie Adams speak at Cafe Con Tampa last week, and it's recorded. You can watch it online. Dave Coleman posted it. But he had a robust discussion. The idea of that is to give exposure to other people throughout the city so folks know what the issues are in Sulphur Springs. Again, he's one person. But if we can help build capacity, maybe doing something like having a town hall meeting up there like we did with Fair Oaks years ago. We could have a meeting, and we could have folks speak and have conversations with them. My concern is that Tampa has been ruled for many years by what I call the edifice complex. The same thing that just happened here on Channel District, that we have people who don't understand economic development, not Ms. Feely, but the people who are asking for they don't understand economic development. Their perspective on economic development is that we need shiny new buildings that benefit usually their clients because they're lobbyists. And what we do is we tear out jobs in the port, which are essential, strategically important for our area. In Sulphur Springs and in East Tampa, we need jobs. We don't need subsidized jobs. We need jobs that are unique to the area. And we need to figure out how to do that. And that's because economic development folks traditionally have not focused on those areas, and they've not focused on the unique attributes of those areas. They've just looked at subsidies and ways to sell people if they focus on them at all. The simple thing, I think all of us have taken tours with Charlie Adams and others, but the very simple thing is all the parks are falling apart. We've got the pool, but the park around it, the river walk there, there are pocket parks in all the little neighborhoods. If we just fixed up the little pocket parks, that would make a huge difference. And so, allocating money like we should be, they're mowed, but there's nothing really to do there. And so if we fix those, that would be a start. Fixing some of the other basic infrastructure and listening to the community on what we can do there. You mentioned Suitcase City. The University Area CDC is a great example of looking at things from the people's point of view. There's a Mexican indigenous language, what is it, Quechua or something like that, that a lot of people there know. So they got the workers to learn how to speak that language. They understand the culture. They engage them. They brought in groups like the Gobioff Foundation, invest in the arts. They get retired leaders in the community to come and coach kids in basketball and football and other programs, and stand there and tell them not to use drugs. And so the difference is, the goal is not to build buildings and to plow over things that don't look nice right now. The goal is to help the people to get involved and engaged and really build a sense of community so they can even be more proud of their area, and then things will build organically. And it's a totally different mindset than this city has really looked at in a long, long time, and we need to get to that. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
So several years ago, a friend of mine and I, he lived in Seminole Heights, but we were going through Sulphur Springs, and he said, Sulphur Springs, this is his opinion, is a transient community. It was people coming to vacation, in the 20s and 30s and whatnot. And he said, so you never had that permanent residency. It was people coming in and out. And I go, no, there are people that are multi-generational that live there. I even read, and I've never found proof, that Cary Grant, the actor, had a house in Sulphur Springs or would vacation in Sulphur Springs in the 1930s. I know Cesar Romero had a house off, like in your neighborhood. The house is there, but you did? Yeah. So, and I told Mr. O'Hara that I was watching the Batman movie from 1966 the other day. He's a big Batman fan. But anyways, to get back to the point, Sulphur Springs is a beautiful community. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I spend a lot of time in Rowlett Park, right? I take Florida and I take Nebraska. I see the Springs Theater. I don't go to the pool, but I go to River Tower Park. I see that, you call it the boardwalk, and go back there. I know the history of the area. Either I talk to my mother about it or people that remember it. The thing is, and this is maybe one of my faults, I see the beauty I try to look for the beauty in bad people, good people, ugly places, pretty places, but you try to look for the good. So, as you know, I walk the Riverwalk all the time. And the other day, I had a great idea. And I said, I'm walking the Riverwalk, and I go, like Forrest Gump when he said, I just started walking, and he didn't stop. I said, I just want to keep on walking. So I walked to Ybor. I parked here. I walked to Ybor. I walked to Armature Works. I went through, and I go, I'm going to walk through the city of Tampa. And I'm not talking about knocking on doors campaigning, but I did this during COVID when there was no traffic on the road. I live in West Tampa, and I walked from St. Joe's. I came to City Hall. I walked through Hyde Park. I walked through, and I go, and I ended up in Ybor City, and I go, I am seeing the city from a different perspective than just being in a bus or a car or on a bike. I go, look at this beautiful, I never noticed this detail. Look at this, look at that. There's a lot of beauty in the city. I'm saying from my perspective, I have a lot of ideas, and some I don't want to talk about today, but I'll tell you about one. So I'm on the board of the Tampa Theater, and the Tampa Theater is going to be doing some renovations, and they won't be showing movies soon. And they said, where can we go and show movies? And I said, well, you have the Cuban Club, the Centro Studiano. And I go, we have movies in the park. They've done it at Curtis Sixton where they'll show like Wizard of Oz or whatever. I said, why don't we do a pop-up drive-in at the Water Tower in Sulphur Springs? They used to be a drive-in, but do it where, so in the old-time drive-ins, you pulled up and you had the speaker that you would hang on your window. In modern drive-ins, and Funland had this, you would tune your radio to a certain signal, and you see that. So I told Tampa Theater, I said, do a pop-up screen at River Tower Park in the same layout, have cars pull up like an original drive-in, show whatever movie, and have people tune onto their radio. People go to, that don't live in Sulphur Springs or in Seminole Heights or in East Tampa, they go to like Pops in the Park. So many people from all over the city go there. And that would never go to that park other than passing on the interstate and seeing the tower. We do things like that, let's say Tampa Theater, and a couple of other ideas that I'll talk about, another day, and people start discovering it. And it's not about, gentrification. It's about rediscovering beautiful areas in Tampa and saying, hey, I would invest here. Why don't we move here? Look at this historic home. We can restore it. I know a lady that her husband bought up a lot of real estate in Ybor City back in the 80s, right? And she told me, my husband bought X building on 7th Avenue for like nothing. And I told my mom, I go, because my grandfather used to buy some real estate back in the day when he was alive. I go, why didn't y'all ever buy in Ybor City? She said, because you didn't. Ybor City in 1978 is not Ybor City of what you see it. She said, we go to the Columbia restaurant every Saturday night and we'd go home. It wasn't like you see it now. Now you can't touch property in Ybor City because the stories that I hear, I could have bought this building for 80 grand, 45 years ago. Now, they want $5 million. But anyways, someone had an idea saying, hey, Ybor City, we can bring that back. Somebody said, I have a friend that lived in Hyde Park, historic Hyde Park. She said, I lived there for free off Bayshore in an old Victorian home or an early 1900s home because the owner said, please, I need somebody there. If not, homeless people are going to break into it, blah, blah, blah. People tell me I couldn't get a loan to buy a house in Hyde Park. Now, okay, a little house in Hyde Park, $900,000, $1 million, you know, and
I don't know what Hyde Park you're at, but you can't find a house in Hyde
Yeah,
Park.
more.
There's a house, yeah, off Howard. I mean, it was 900 because my wife, it's a mission style architecture home, but this is now like 3 years ago. But the thing is, once you spark interest, and this is not gentrification because they have restored historic Hyde Park. They have restored Seminole Heights. My buddy that said, well, you know, Seminole Heights is a transient. He bought in Seminole Heights in like 2001, at 90 grand on a big lot, something like that, you know. They tore that house down, and I don't know if it sold, but it's like $750 for the new house. And it's a little house without a garage, you know what I'm saying? But he goes, Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, okay? When the school caught on fire on Columbus Drive, I went down to see the fire, right? And the power was out in parts of the neighborhood. And I walked through that neighborhood, I go, some of the most beautiful architecture, you know, these Victorian era, late 1800s, early 1900s homes, look at people sitting on their porch. I couldn't afford this. But if you talk to my dad, who's been here since 1981, he thinks Tampa Heights is $30,000 houses. And I go, you wish, you wish. So in the 80s, I mean, we would take MLK to Tampa Street to get downtown. We drive right through the neighborhood. And I look at Armature Works. I drive down Palm Avenue to get to Ybor City with my grandmother as a kid. I didn't pay attention to it was just, it's an old neighborhood, you know? Long story short, because I will ramble. I will ramble. Too late.
You said that 3 times.
That thing, I'm gonna
I've
close
got to
that.
divide, between the two of you down there, that's bad, the two of you sitting next to each other.
I'm gonna finish with this. All it takes is a spark to reignite in a good way a neighborhood. And this is not gentrification, this is reinvestment. And the people that live there, to build generational wealth. We want you to stay. You are what makes that neighborhood. But here's the grocery store, here's the middle class, here's the amenities, the doctor's office, the whatever it is. And we can do that with Sulphur Springs. We can do that with East Tampa. You know, we can do that with land use decisions and policies that we can make up here in collaboration with you and with private investment. You know, Councilman Vieira said every federal dollar, every Mayor Greco, I'm going to finish with this, would tell me when he was mayor in the 60s, right, through urban renewal, and he would talk about model cities. Yep. And it was, it's a blighted neighborhood, a blighted neighborhood. We would get federal funding through the Johnson and Nixon administration. That's what it was at the time. But money was coming in, and it was very aggressive because we're talking interstate. There's a lot of negatives there. But we can utilize the resources that we have from here to the federal level to reinvest in these communities. There is no excuse in 2025 that poverty continues to exist and people live below the poverty line there. When we talk about the poorest neighborhood in the city, they don't have access to fresh food. I mean, things that we take for granted that you think, well, go to Publix. They don't have a Publix, you know? They have empty buildings, big spaces, but to me, that's opportunity, and that's for us to invest. So thank you for listening to my history lesson today. Thank you for indulging me, because I could talk forever.
We love you, Councilman Maniscalco.
But I believe in this community, and I believe that we can make positive investments to make things better. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda, do you want to follow that?
If I follow that, I would die. So I'm not going to go there. But I can only tell you this, communities have a history of going down, and you look at the little parks that you have, when you see a lot of kids in the park, you have a community on the rise. When you see no kids, you have a community in the decline.
Yeah.
And I can only give you an example about West Tampa. The big park, which was West Tampa Little League, 5 or 6 years ago was floundering. Now there's over 300 kids.
Right.
The community's coming right back to it.
Yeah, I see that too.
And that's how it is.
Yeah.
Can I say
Absolutely.
one more quick thing?
Well, I was going to respond to something you said, reference the cost of all that real estate. It's always good to go, oh, you know, I could have bought it back then, but you realize back then that $40 or $60 or $80,000 might as well have been $4 million.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, we weren't making, I wasn't making any money, and I was trying to raise 2 kids, and you know, even though it seems like based on the scale of today,
right,
it was still out of reach for most of us. I mean, and a lot of that Ybor property, you know, it was all controlled by the few families.
Sure.
You couldn't get it.
But 15 years ago, I remember Wells Fargo was a bank-owned property, a house in East Tampa, 600 square feet for $9,900. That's what the bank wanted. And I said, oh, I'm out of college. I had the money, but I'm going, it's going to take me years to recoup. You know, I'm going to rent it out for $500 a month, you know? What is that land worth today? $150,000, 200,000 for a lot? You know, I mean, it's,
Councilman Carlson?
So the new $30,000, you all have taken the same tours I've taken of Silver Spring, but the new $30,000 is $300,000 or $400,000 houses on the water. And tell anybody in South Tampa or even across the river that you can buy a lot for less than $400,000 on the water. And all you have to do is stand there and look at the houses across the river and the ones on this side. And you know that if you have the edifice complex, if your only goal is to kick poor people out and build new buildings, you get somebody like Blackstone to come in, buy up all those lots along the river, get them to rebrand it, and build $1 million, $2 million houses. And then everything will start to change. The better way to do it is to start working on programs. You all probably met some of the kids who are playing on the streets and stuff along there. The better thing is to build up the parks and build up the programs in the parks to build activity and connectivity, just like the University Area CDC has done. And let's build a sense of community there and help build the community from the ground up.
Help people fix up their houses too. Okay, that's the last agenda item, unless I've missed anything. Clerk, are we done? Do we got it?
Chairman, if you'll indulge me
Ms.
just
Feely?
once, I
We-
just
we
want to.
might as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I want to say the robust discussion about this is just so wonderful. And I think you all know we do have the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood Action Plan going on right now. We are working on the Fresh Food Initiative there. And as those progress, we need to ensure that we're reporting back to you on that so you have an awareness, and we're folding all these things in together so that when the redevelopment comes, we put that neighborhood in the best position possible to be what it needs to be next. And that's where I think it links in to what we talked about today. So I just want to thank you for all your perspective and insight on that. It was really very lovely this afternoon, and welcome back.
Thank you, Ms. Feely. Okay, I think we are done with the agenda items, right? We've checked everything off. We've received and filed what we needed to. So let's go to new business. Councilman Carlson.
Just a comment and then a motion. This morning, it was presented to us that we would each have a $100,000 nonprofit fund. A few weeks ago, I just threw out an idea. Councilman Vieira has worked a lot more in Sulphur Springs than I have, so he could make a motion or somebody else could. But if there's $700,000 there, what we can do is allocate that as a Sulphur Springs nonprofit fund, and direct that money to go into the. I've met with a bunch of the nonprofits there, as you all have, and the nonprofits can create the programs to get the kids and the families activated. And again, that's a way of working on things from the ground up rather than just on real estate development. Separately, these are coming to me. I know they used to come to you, Councilmember Vieira. Maybe they are as well. But I've got two Eagle Scouts that have recently been awarded and would like to have off-site commendations. So I'd like to make a motion to present Christian Santiago of Troop 3892 and Lila Mora of Troop 89 with off-site commendations in honor of their achieving the rank of Eagle Scout.
We have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Vieira. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
If I may,
Councilman Vieira.
thank you, sir. A couple of things. I'd requested, apparently, next week, or this Friday actually, is do some of that nonprofit applications. Some of my folks are needing a little bit of time. What is the method by which I seek extension? Just.
Is that an administrative issue?
So, yes, I guess so. I don't know.
And I'm not familiar with specific grants.
I think it's in the Ms. McGregor's department.
Okay. So how about this? May I have a motion from council requesting for a 1-week extension, which then I will take to them, which I'm sure they will give.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Maniscalco, requested a 1-week extension.
The application.
Yeah. Oh, the nonprofit funds, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, council. I have a couple of really quick ones, if I may.
Is that a Maniscalco quick?
Oh, I know. No, these are fairly quick, but there are a number, and I apologize. On July 31st, we're having Mr. Eric Kaiser, who's one of our interns, a wonderful young man, who is going to speak about this Autism Citizen Report. Documents, if you remember, that folks can give if they're on the spectrum, they can give to law enforcement, letting them know that they're on the spectrum. Eric some medical stuff going on. And so we need to push it back to August 28th when we're open. That is under staff reports because he is a City of Tampa worker.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Those opposed?
Thank
Ayes have
you,
it.
Council. Project Focus, y'all may have read about in Tampa Bay Business Journal. They're looking at building a 156,000 square foot community center in Tampa for housing for the intellectually disabled. And I wanted to invite Mr. Clayton Clemens with them. I am on their board to come on August 28th, please. Let's do 10 minutes with discussion, 5 for him, 5 for council.
And is that early, under commendations and presentations at
If I may,
9
yes, sir.
a.m.? Thank
Yep.
you.
We're just looking at this. Yeah, okay.
It's open, yep.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
I will be doing next week a number of motions regarding reminders because we're having some change up in mobility, in stormwater, as well as now in parks. There's a lot of things happening there. So I like to do internal reminders because otherwise it'll be part 8 of Station 24 and I don't want that. So a motion for status update on the timeline of the Harrison Boonstapple new Tampa All Abilities Park renaming. This includes the plaque that was requested for for the late Mr. Boonstapple by the family. I say this because Mr. Mulkey's no longer here. It's a written report for August 7th.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
And then we heard today about the funds, which, unless I'm correct, the $2 million or so that was requested for flooding victims for housing assistance is going to be in the budget, as I understand it, as proposed by the mayor. And so I motioned for the administration to report back in 2 weeks at the July 31st meeting on the timeline for making those funds available for homeowners in need. We are late to the party, and it's not a party. It's a time of suffering and everything for folks, and we got to get this thing done as soon as possible. So July 31st, if I may.
Real quick, I've actually got a motion about this as well, and realize that we have to get a resolution from the administration for those funds, so that the funds have not, so the council has to pass a resolution. So, and I'm going to have an amendment to that as well for, so I don't know how that'll.
May I?
Yeah.
And if you need a tag on to mine for purposes of not overdoing the number of reports, I'm fine with that. But I say this uniquely with this, that once we do the resolution, when are those monies going to be available for people? Because man, that's the deal.
Can I have something that goes along with that is, I mean, have we actually expended the other 3.2 million?
So that's a great, we have not.
I think that's something that we could certainly ask for now to find out where we are in that process. I mean, I don't disagree with you that we will need to do that, but let's find out where we are.
Yes, I can tell you where we're at. So if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
so.
Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir, thank you. So those funds have not been expended. The reason why I am pushing for this with vigor is because the original $3 million or so that we appropriated is subject to federal means-tested requirements that preclude a lot of people from benefiting. These funds are not. There are tons of working class and middle class people who got screwed who are waiting for these dollars. So that's why I say that. But those funds have not because of all the strings attached to them.
Okay.
Are we asking for this to be a staff report?
Staff report, yes.
Okay, so just FYI, you already have 4 items scheduled, and you all limited it to 4 staff reports.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 5 for some reason.
So
Okay,
make it
so
written?
how about this? We'll do it for written, and then I'll talk about it in motion time. That's fine.
Well, again, would it be appropriate, because we don't have the resolution yet, getting the resolution and then ask for that?
Wait a second. So if I may ask either to Chairman or Ms. Suling, is one of those items the presentation by Eric? Because I just removed that. So we fit. And so what I want, Mr. Chairman, is not status on making it happen, but status of once we approve the resolution, when can we get these dollars out? What kind of system is going to be available for pushing these dollars out? Because again, these are not going to be constrained by federal guidelines on who gets what. It's going to be a lot more inclusive. That's a big deal. So that's why I want that. I understand about the resolution, but I do think a timeline's important.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilman Vera, second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And then my last motion, if I may, is, so this is on the disability internship. That's coming up for us. But I want a resolution from, not a resolution, but a motion stating as follows. The disability internship, which again, we will talk about this, has been appropriated for a few $100,000. And when it comes to actually interns here in the city of Tampa, I believe we've had two. And I'm very, 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 again, and I've waited to speak publicly about this because this issue is very, very emotional to me. And I've tried to deal with it on the back end as much as possible, but it's out and it's coming to us in a few weeks. So my request is that we've been funding this through the social action funds. And I was told that this money is not going to be in the budget because it's under social action funds and it's up to council. That should not be, an internship should not be under social action fund. So my request is that city council state that, which is that this fund should come out of the general budget. Why is this a social, why are we going to deal with these limitations on it? And by the way, if we appropriate the money, is it going to actually go into work? Because we've had two interns. So that's another level of frustration.
I have a quick question about that. If we've allocated money for a couple of years, where is the leftover money?
So what I did, again, because I always try to achieve, instead of public conflict, try to look at mediation and compromise. We are potentially giving those funds away to organizations like McDonald's Training Center, like the Grow Group, like CUP. That's a motion that I made some time ago. But the purpose of this was not a subsidy to these organizations. It was to make the city of Tampa a stakeholder in having people with intellectual disabilities get paid $15 an hour under an internship program. That's my frustration. So some of those funds have gone that way. And I got to see how much has been left over. I'm currently inquiring on that, but that's a very good question.
Thank you.
Councilman Carlson?
Yeah, I think this is was a great idea when you came up with it a long time ago, and it's a very important program that we need to build on. It's again about building community and building the people of our community, and having this on the resume, having that experience is invaluable. Some of the folks have ended up getting full-time jobs. What about if to make it permanent, what about if we set it up as I know we have to work with the administration ultimately, but what if we set it up as a permanent fund under Raquel?
May I? Yes.
So that it's not that coming from this other direction, it's a
Yep.
permanent fund.
And so that's what my motion goes to, sir, which is to take it out of the social action fund, which makes it temporary, and to find a way into general budget, which is permanent, which is when we originally got it there, when I proposed it, I'm like, I don't care if we get this done through lemonade stands or whatever, but let's get this thing done. But that's the challenge. So you know what?
Just clarification question. I mean, I hear everything you say, but now since we're going to be knee-deep into budget season, would this just be something that we bring to one of the budget workshops?
It is, but what I want is a position of the administration. Again, will you go out with me? Check yes or no, okay? And I just want a yes or no on this, which is on August 7th, a written report, which is, are they willing to move those funds from the social action fund to the general fund? It could be under the
Previously
Raquel's
allocated funds or FY26 money?
Oh, no. From here on out, from here to eternity.
Do they need to do that, or when we do the budget, can't we just do that?
So
I understand what you're saying, though.
I think we need it now because he's been just like with the fire station, he's been pushing for a long time and it's not happening.
So here's my question. So other than getting them on the record, if we go into this budget cycle, we go into a workshop and we say we're going to allocate X number of dollars in in this category out of the social action fund under whatever department we allocate it. Even if we do that, we still can't force them to spend it.
Yeah, I know. And may I?
Yeah.
Thank you. So
I kind of think we're in a kind of a
there's a couple of things, which is number one, to get their position. Either way, we're going to have to deal with it. But I want the administration's position on this because this is step one on number one, keeping on this on the agenda. So that's all that I want is, are they willing to get this from the general budget as opposed to social action? That's it. Because right now, it's not in the budget. And by the way, again, if it was in the budget, would it go forward? That's another question.
Yeah, this gets back again to what is our goal? Is our goal the edifice complex that we measure success by pretty new buildings, or do we measure by impact on the people? For this morning, for the first time, I heard a mayor say that we need to focus on, or that one of the successes we had was median household income. That's something that's been in the Tampa scorecard now for 6 years. Per capita income is the other thing. If we focus on numbers like that, the way you move up the numbers is not just to have rich people, which is what the policy has been to date. We're really good at making millionaires, but we're not good at bringing people up like St. Pete did. And what we need to do is look at the denominator and figure out what are the categories of folks that could be earning more money that are not fulfilling their full capacity. And this is a group, it's not a big group, but it's a really important group that we need to help to move up. And we see how productive these folks are once they're given the first step. And so our goal has to be our economy and economic development, not real estate development. And if we do that, then we're going to make this community very successful.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I mean, I agree with you, but I also think, my first thought about the median income was I was concerned because the problem is people that can't afford to live here are leaving and they're moving out to the county. We're seeing this. This is going on. And so I understand, hearing it from that perspective is good, but my initial thought was that's not good. Because we are basically leaving our poorest citizens behind because they can no longer afford to live here. And that is what we hear from public comment. It's what I hear from the community. Quite frankly, I believe it has a lot to do with our declining crime numbers because people can't afford to live here anymore. And it's an unfortunate byproduct. And we all have been talking today about ways to bring folks or keep people here, bring people back. And I think, I don't know,
If you go to tampascorecard.com, and again, I developed that with a bunch of top economists in the state, and the people who have an edifice complex goal don't like it. But if you look at it, what we did, working with USF economists and others, is we teased out on per capita income, for example, what's the difference? And the reason why our per capita income is second highest in the state among major cities is because we have an unusually high number of people who are millionaires, essentially, but people making more than $200,000 a year. Why? Because the goal for at least the last 15 years has been to help millionaires to make more and to help real estate developers. And the reason why folks can't afford to live here anymore is because the real estate prices are getting squeezed out because of all the development going on. Again, because that's the goal and not helping people.
It's all good discussion, but this is kind of rough. We
Okay.
spiraled out off the subject.
Sorry.
Councilman Vieira has a motion.
If I can address Councilman Vieira, just so I'm clear for the purpose of what you're suggesting for a written report from the administration.
Yes, sir.
Is the purpose?
I was going to ask him to restate it.
No, I want to be able to articulate it just so that the clerk is
Want me to
clear. And
state
so
it?
is he. No, but I just want to, if I can phrase it and you tell me.
Yes, sir.
Because it applies not only to this subject, which is your topic, but it's your purpose, if I understand it, is to learn the administration's position on expenditures of funds to support council's intended purpose, ultimately.
Yeah, the specific narrowly tailored purpose here is the internship program for this year on forward to put it out of the social action network or funding, whatever the hell it is, and to put it into from the general fund. Take out the help.
But also irrespective of wherever the pot of money is that the administration supports that expenditure for that purpose.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Vieira, a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
August 7th.
Ayes have it. Councilman Hurtak.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First of all, I did want to say, kind of to Councilman Carlson's point, this is the time to have the discussion about where we want to spend the money to build. This will be my third thing. So we really need to start thinking in the CIP, do we really want to spend money on buildings or do we want to spend money on people? And I think that should probably be our guiding question as we look through this budget cycle. I think that's a good point. Secondly, I have been hearing murmurings that the large format digital media, that the staff is not sure that we want to continue with that. And I want to continue with that. It was Councilwoman Henderson's motion, but I am still very interested in it. And I don't, just wanted to make sure that that's still a go for us.
I think it was one of the main things that she was pushing before she passed. But the second thing is that modern cities are using this. I just came back from a whole trip in all these different cities, and everybody's using this. I don't know if you've seen this Chinese technology. It's the little squares. We're not talking about billboards and the folks who push to give a couple exclusive agreements in downtown don't want competition in downtown, but that's not what it is. Imagine along Franklin Street if it was tastefully used in certain ways. The downtown partnership is going to come back and recommend a process that's unique to Tampa. We don't want Times Square. Of course, we don't want anything like that. Piccadilly is probably too big also. But there are cities that have smaller, tasteful things. In places like Dubai, every store has it. You feel like you're in some kind of futuristic science fiction movie because everybody has moving videos all the time, everywhere you go, and not huge ones, small ones that just cover like doors and windows in front of stores. And so we just need a policy on how to do it and to apply it. And we shouldn't just be giving exclusives to a couple folks.
I agree, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up and say, yeah, I'm still interested in it. If you want to.
No, I'm glad you are, and we should pursue it and move forward. And I mean, growing up, you watch movies like Back to the Future Part 2, where they go to 2015 and how futuristic the world is, and then you look at how behind we are, and we're 10 years ahead of that. So. No, I'm glad that you brought that up and that we continue the discussion. So thank you.
Councilman Vera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I mean, my thing about going forward with this is to make sure a couple of things that I know everybody here agrees, so this isn't a point of distinction, just my thing, which is, there's a lot of people that live downtown, and make sure that we, have the stakeholders be talked to, the residential stakeholders. It's not just commercial and so forth. And I want to make sure that all of the parties to this issue get a place at the table, a voice at the table, and that it's something where ships can largely sail in the same direction, because I do think there is a lot of privity there. But that'll be from going forward, but just my thoughts.
Yes, but I'm just stating that I'm expecting that September 25th discussion to still occur.
Okay, thank you. Next.
And then my last thing is I passed out. I told you this morning that I wanted to talk about the audits that they're planned for this year, and I was shocked when I looked at the list and didn't see anything having to do with stormwater, because it seems like it's all we're talking about. So this is the last audit that was done about stormwater in 2019, as well as the post-audit review, and then some of the infrastructure inventory. And I have been talking to Ms. Kopesky because we did ask her to compile some of that data. But while we're talking about audits, I just want to put on the administration's radar that I'm interested in a stormwater audit, and that I want everyone to give a chance to look through this information, and since we only have 30 days, I would love it to be part of old discussion on at our next meeting, just to really discuss between even the administration and us, what can we study that will give us some interesting information. We talked to Christine already, and that's where we got this information. And I know we don't have a ton of room for this. And I had Chief Bennett reach out to me before afternoon session to say, hey, we might be able to accomplish this another way. But either way, we need to talk about it. We need to figure out what items we want to look at. I was just, again, supremely disappointed to not see stormwater on the audit report.
Can you ask for her to be present at that discussion?
Sure.
Are you putting it on the? If you put it on the agenda, I'll second it.
Can we schedule an old business? Can we schedule something in old business? Okay. So then I motion to have a discussion that includes staff about including a stormwater audit in the old business for July 31st.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak. Actually, it was Councilman Carlson beat you to the second. Motion from Councilman Hurtak, second from Councilman Carlson.
Can I just make one suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Well, it is a busy day, but since it's not an actual staff report, since it's an old business, my hope is by then we'll have a decent idea, because I think we all need to come with something we want to see. Also, Ms. Kopesky is going to, on that day, isn't that when your report is due? So her report about this, we asked her to, it is a written report, but to create schedules reflecting the equipment and service used to support stormwater maintenance activities along with the associated age for each asset, and a summary of stormwater maintenance expenses by vendor from 2024 to date. We should have that. If you have to put it into the on-base by tomorrow or next week, yeah, she has to have it in on-base by next week. She could just email it to all of us. Yeah, so I'm going to ask her to email it to all of us.
Instead of just asking for staff, can you specifically ask for Ms. Glover to come?
I'll ask for Ms. Glover and any other staff that might be interested in participating.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilman Carlson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Guido Maniscalco.
No, I have nothing, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda. That is a fact. That is a fact. Councilwoman Hurtak, would you take the gavel, please?
Yes, I recognize Chair.
I would like to make a motion that the administration to present a financial resolution at the July 31st meeting to restore the $2.5 million to street resurfacing from the 2024 allocated fund balance for a total of $5 million, as well as the fund balance request that City Council had previously forwarded.
For the FY 2024.
FY 2024.
Second, and if I may say, thank you for Chairman Clendenin for fighting for this, because I get complaints, we all get complaints, and just pave the roads. You know, I mean, there's a lot going on in the city, but the biggest complaint that I get and request is just please pave my street. And when you see the amount of property taxes that people pay and the houses that they live in and it's a mess all over the city. It's not rich and poor. It's just, but I'm glad that you brought this up, and I look forward to just improving the quality of our roads, because I hear it every day.
Well, I look forward to, as well as we look forward to the next fiscal year as we go through the budget, that we don't settle on the repaving budget as well, that we continue to, because this council's done a really good job over the last couple of years of increasing, and it's not gone unnoticed. I don't know if, I mean, I get the comments that they're starting to see it, they're paved roads that haven't been paved in decades, we're starting to do this. We can't take the foot off the gas. So.
Councilman Miranda.
Remember what I said, it's somebody else's budget now. When we get it, it's our budget. So even though your question for answering for it is right, we're going to do it anyway without anybody's help.
Okay, Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I said this morning, but the $2.5 million is really important, but that's like one or two roads. We need $50 million a year, and we need $2 billion. So we've got to. The sad thing is that we're fighting for scraps that we had already approved. It should be a no-brainer. The administration shouldn't fight us on this, and that's a longer discussion for another day.
And I'm gonna put my 2 cents in. Councilman Miranda's right. It's our budget now. We don't have to build buildings. We can pave roads. Yep. It's really what we decide to do. Yep. And as we are really talking about the fact of, do we build buildings or do we help people? And I think that's a really good question as we go into this budget cycle. How do we want our city to look? And I don't know. It just, for me this morning, looking at it, it was the clarifying thing that was, we've been building a lot, but maybe it's time to, the county commission got rid of all of its social acts and arts funding. I mean, how can we really take $1.5 million away? I feel like we have to find something, because there's really nowhere else for people to go. People are going to start coming to us because they've lost money with the county. And we may not have answers for everybody, but I know that some things that are in the city, we might have to help. Councilman Carlson.
No, just one thing to add on that. There's so many common sense things that should be done. For example, Hannah Avenue, what is it, 30-40% of the building is still empty? And I asked the question, how much of it are you subleasing? And they said, what is that? And the people in the private sector, I've said that too, are shocked. If I don't know how much we could get from that, but let's say it's at least $200,000 or $300,000 a year. Think of what we could do with that in a community like Sulphur Springs or in East Tampa.
Yeah.
Think about the job programs we could get. We just need to be smart about how we run the city.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So there's a motion on the floor, and I have a, yes.
I would say put it on the consent agenda.
Yeah, and if we need to pull it, we can pull it. Okay, so I have a motion from from Chair Clendenin and a second from Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We have a motion to receive and file from Councilman Maniscalco, second from Councilman Miranda. We are adjourned.